Hello, listeners. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Changepreneurs podcast, where we bring you conversations that ignite transformation. I'm Vanita Senkuruchi, your host today, joined by my co host, Sirish Raj, another credentialed life coach. Today, we have an exciting guest who's changing the way busy professionals approach fitness. Shobhan Ojha, a fitness entrepreneur and a former clinical researcher. Shobhan's approach goes beyond just workouts and diets. He focuses on something even more powerful: your mindset, daily habits, and a sustainable way to for all of us to stay in shape. No crash diets. He does not prescribe any extreme routines, just smart, science backed strategies that fit into your busy schedule. We'll explore Shobhan's journey from clinical researcher to fitness coaching and how he is helping professionals achieve long lasting results. If you have struggled to balance fitness with a demanding career, this conversation is a must listen for all of you. So here are some questions. Shobhan, first and foremost, let me start by asking, if someone is, say, someone like me is looking to lose weight, then what is the most important thing? Would you say diet? Would you say maybe exercise? Or is it something else?
Hmm. See, for most people, I believe that before we dial in on losing weight, we need to firstly understand the overall lifestyle of the person. Because at this present times, for most of us are doing a lot of things wrong with regards to how we should. Even something as basic as sleep is compromised for most of us. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are at such a point in human history where we have access to all these delivery apps, which basically means we have very little to no movement throughout our days. Even if we want to, there are things which facilitate movement. So, which makes movement difficult because they facilitate a lot of convenience throughout. So, in that case, we first need to figure out a trifecta, a tripod of understanding. The first leg would be fixing the rest and recovery. That is the most paramount because a lot of us are stressed out with our work, with our family, and that means fixing the sleep. The next two factors would be dialing in on the diet and then finding out time to start a workout routine, which as per you would be something that you can sustain for long, right? So again, the idea of what I believe in is creating middle grounds. The books talk about something, the theoretical part says something, but you as a person faces a whole new set of unique challenges every day, right? So for us to find success, the first and foremost thing we need to do is get into that middle ground of things, wherein you may not be doing things perfectly or as per what you see on reels or while scrolling through social media or what you get in your WhatsApp forwards, but you develop a system and structure which fits well with your lifestyle and helps you accomplish certain tasks every day. Once that is dialed in, everything else becomes a piece of cake. It's just a matter of understanding. Once you understand that, everything else is an easier thing to do.
Hmm.
Very interesting, Shobhan. So, Shobhan, there is so much of information and misinformation these days on the social media.
Correct.
How do you overcome this challenge of so much of surplus information available? You must be telling something to the client, and the client must be watching a reel on the YouTube or on Instagram with somebody coming and saying, Maggie, I made my physique with eating Maggie, and you must be
True,
eating up
true,
your head.
true,
I want to have Maggie in my diet.
true, true.
How do you overcome this particular challenge as a coach?
Uh, as a coach, this started happening much later. I can probably find an answer to this situation because I have been at a place wherein I was bombarded with information. And I was somebody who was program hopping from one thing to another, and I was getting that information overload because I am somebody who discovered internet pretty early on in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was very young, probably 12, 13, 14 years old, I would go to these forums on the internet and try finding out more information about fitness in general, body weight exercises, what routines to follow, and all that. But despite that, I didn't have much success to show for more than 15 years of my life because I kept surrounding myself with whole new set of information. And the thing with fitness is it's an industry. And fitness media, I would say, is an industry in itself. आज के date में, today's time, we have the reels and we have fitness influencers and coaches producing newer content every day. But even before that, we had different magazines, we had different, publishers pushing out magazines every week. So when you have to push out a magazine every month, you need content because what would you otherwise write in that piece and how would you sell your magazine? So you need something to sell. That is the basic premise. And even now, most of the times, when you see most of the reels or even YouTube shorts or whatever you come across on your phone, most of the people are trying to sell you something. And that is how you realize and that is how you filter most of the times if the information being given is genuine or not. So if I have to give a solid set of information, I don't have to back it up by saying, okay, fine, you buy this product. आज के डेट में आप जो भी देखो, most of the information that you see is backed by a product of their own, which is not technically a bad thing. But then this is a very clear cut giveaway. तो वहां से
Mhm.
मुझे ये चीज समझ में आती है कि अगर कोई सेल करने की कोशिश कर रहा है या ओवरटली सेल कर रहा है. Second thing which I have realized after spending almost two-thirds of my life into reading and understanding and working out, and now I do it for a living, you can say. So one thing I have realized is कि the basics are very few. वो
Mhm.
बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है.
Mhm.
It's good to be research based, it's good to be science based, but even the thing with the science based is कि science जो है, it does not go somewhere else completely and then establish a fact. It doesn't happen like that. It might just scale up slightly from where we actually are. थोड़ा उसके अराउंड आगे पीछे होगा. कल को अगर कोई आपके too good to be true वाली कोई बात कह रहा है, if somebody says something like you drink this for 30 days and you will end up losing 30 kilos, it is just playing with the mindset because all
Mhm.
of us are looking for that easy way out. So if somebody
Mhm.
is trying to sell something, if somebody is trying to give you an easy way which seems too good to be true, यार ये तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं है यार, ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है. तो वो चीजें जो है, those are the filters of understanding if the information being given is genuine or not. So if this is my filter and this is how I ask my clients also to filter the the information that they see कि आप देखो सामने वाले को तो कंटेंट भी तो बनाना है, वो भी तो उसका काम है. तो ही विल कम अप विद सर्टेन थिंग्स. बाइसेप्स आपको ट्रेन करनी है, आपको ये वाला मूवमेंट ही करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, आपने थोड़ा डंबल आगे से पकड़ लिया, पीछे से पकड़ लिया, कभी केबल पे कर ली, स्मॉल वेरिएशंस यू कैन ट्राई, बट आप नई एक्सरसाइज नहीं बना सकते हो.
Mhm.
So the whole thing is based upon the novelty factor that what most of us are looking for always is not something that exists in fitness for most of the time. It's rather the repetitive oneness of the same thing happening again and again and again and again without having to see much progress is what defines fitness in its true form. कि हो सकता है वो चीज ग्लैमरस ना हो सकता है वो चीज अपीलिंग ना लगे, but you keep doing it without expecting a reward in the short term. Yeah, I'll get something out of it in a month or maybe a couple of months or maybe 6 months or a year down the line. I tell to most of my people I train, I tell them ki once you start into it, give yourself at least 5 years.
Mhm.
And then you will see how ahead of the game you are in front of everybody else around you. So 5 years is what it takes to get that push of sorts. Uske pehle it's just self gratification and instant gratification की 3 महीने में चाहिए और 1 महीने में चाहिए. It's just never ending race.
So two things I take away from what you said is one thing very important: there is no easy way out. And second, you mentioned about the 15 years, your journey, 15 years. So tell us a little bit about your own physical transformation journey in the last 15 years, uh, your challenges you faced, the mindset issues that you overcome, and you've been consistently at it for the last 15 years.
So for me, the journey started when I was probably in seventh standard, 12, 13 years old. And that's when I started doing a lot of push-ups and wanting to learn pull-ups. And I started going on the internet to see how to do the first pull-up and how to get your first push-up. That's how it all started, basically. Simply because I didn't want to be bullied. Till that time, I was either too skinny. Sometimes I put on a bit of weight during when I was hitting puberty. So all of that was leading to constant bullying in different forms, and I was never happy and satisfied with how I looked. So, and I was at that time I was not too tall either. I was still growing. So the only thing at that point I could think of is probably if I start doing some push-ups, I'll become stronger. And maybe if somebody tries to bully me, they'll be scared. As simple as that. It was a very, I would say, a survival mechanism of sorts, which I was trying to develop to cope up with the society. There was nothing fancy. I didn't want to build a physique like an actor. I didn't want to flaunt a six pack. I didn't want to impress the girls. For me, it was just a survival mechanism to just to be, and I was in an all boys school. So to be there with the boys, I needed to be physically something. So the next 2, 3 years were very interesting because I started doing a lot of push-ups. I also started playing a lot of sports, which I actually used to do till that point as well. But I was playing volleyball, basketball, cricket probably on an everyday basis. And that's when I also grew in height. So the growing in height part took care of the bullying thing. It stopped after a point of time. I reached almost a bit more than 6 feet, and then the bullying almost stopped. I finished my 10th, and then we had this option of taking an optional fifth paper. And for some reason, I took physical education at that point. Considering the only thing was if I take physical education, I'll get one free period every week to play a sport of my choice. That was the only intention behind that. I didn't know if I could score in this, if this would be, rewarding in future, if this had any scope. My only consideration was if I take this paper, I get 1 hour every week in school to play basketball or football, and I'm all for it. The curriculum was horrible, if I remember correctly. It was just trying to memorize a lot of things, the measurements of the fields, कि basketball field का measurement क्या होता है, D कितने angle पे लगता है, half line कितने पे आती है, quarter line कितने पे आती है. It was more of rote learning and memorization of a lot of things, but I really looked forward to that 1 hour of physical activity and all that. So then I went to college, and college May I was still 65 kilos at 6'1", which was very lanky. I used to hear things which still, I can still hear those things. I can still channel those things when I'm trying to work out. I remember I was walking through the corridors of my school, and there was this girl standing. I didn't know those girls. We didn't have spoken before. There's no interaction as such which has happened before. And then I hear them talking that, देखो देखो hanger जा रहा है. Because I look like an hanger, just a shirt and you. And that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, people judge me for how I look. So when I went to college, the first thing I did was to check if my hostel building had a gym. That's the first thing I did. Canteen मैंने बाद में देखा. Mess I checked out much later. The first thing I did was to ask if the hostel building itself has a gym. There was a university gym. There was a couple of university gyms, but I took up a hostel with much lesser facilities, but only because that had a gym which was very basic but yet open 24/7. I made some awesome friends there. I learned a lot of things there. That's when I first started working out with the weights, and the love affair with the weights began there. उसके पहले I had tried going to the gym, but as Indian parents are कि नहीं पहले college जाओ फिर gym जाना, अभी पहले पढ़ाई पे ध्यान दो वाली चीज होती है. तो वो था. But once I went to college, I started lifting because I had till that point done whatever I could in terms of body weight exercises. I was doing my pull-ups, I was doing my push-ups, so I already had a base. And probably not much information about nutrition. I probably didn't know anything at that point. At that time I felt if I drink half a liter of milk every day and have 20 bread slices in the morning, that is going to help me get stronger and bigger and build a physique of how I want it to be. So absolutely no idea about nutrition, but all I was driven at that point was key. I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to get better. I didn't want to look the way I used to. So I would carry shoes, a t-shirt, and a shorts in my bag, which I used to get to college. Study the whole day, finish my lab early in the evening, and rush to gym so that I don't have to go back to my room even to change. I don't want to waste any time changing. Straight up, I used to go to gym. I used to do whatever exercises I could with those weights. Those were very basic raw weights with iron making its sounds and then the cables making its sounds. And after it, if it was that kind of a gym that you had to wash your hands and probably keep a spare t-shirt because it would all be greasy after a point because the weights are such, it's all dirty. But that 1.5 year of training there kind of changed everything for me in terms of my confidence, in terms of how I looked, in terms of how I was with people, and eventually what I do right now. So yeah, that's how we changed from there.
So we have to thank those girls eventually.
Yeah. I still thank them every day, if not for them.
So, Shobhan, you did talk about you being skinny or lanky and then
Yeah.
gaining weight. So the same thing, roles reversed. Say someone who's put on little weight and is quite heavy. Then what
True.
would you say is the correct way to lose weight or, gain muscles? How does it work?
Very interesting question. See, it all boils down to gaining muscle is a no-brainer. Everybody has to gain muscle. Even if you're skinny, you still have to gain muscle. If you are obese, overweight, morbidly obese, you have to gain muscle. Because muscle, when when you think of it superficially, the first thing that we think of is bigger biceps, bigger chest, Sunny Deol. All these things come to
Hmm.
our head. Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
But muscles are the foundation of youth, if I were to say that. Not because they only help you with the day-to-day movements, which become increasingly crucial as you age and because you are obese, right? Because let's say if I'm 145 kilos, it makes sense for me to carry muscles in my body because if I don't have muscles, my body has to bear all that 145 kilos of weight as on its
Hmm.
bones and fat. But if I have muscles, that 145 kilos of weight is not going to affect to come on my bones as much, on my joints as much, because my muscles will take some of the load. It's also is going to make your movements much easier because you might have seen a lot of people who are obese or overweight or even in old age, they have difficulty in performing day-to-day basic movements. कुर्सी पर से उठने में दिक्कत होती है. You need
Hmm.
somebody support to get up. करवट बदलने के लिए support चाहिए होती है. All that. Plus, why I said कि muscles are the foundation of youth is because if you have good muscle mass, it means your cell's ability to drive glucose into it using insulin would be high. Basically, it means your insulin sensitivity would be more and your insulin resistance would be less. Now, both these two factors are what causes type 2 diabetes, which India is the capital of right now. So it makes sense in all regards to introduce some sort of resistance training to build muscle mass if somebody is trying to lose weight. So how I like to explain this or to put this into perspective is, let's say somebody has to lose 20 kilos of body fat. When I say body fat, I do not mean body weight. I can just stop eating and I can lose 2, 3 kilos of weight on the scale, but that's not fat. I want the weight loss to be from the stored fat that we have in the body. So to do that, there's a very simple formula that I use for my clients and for myself, which basically means ki you eat lesser than what your body needs, basically. First thing, that is the first thing that you do. In other words, we call it calorie deficit,
Hmm.
which sounds very fancy, but it's just you eating slightly lesser than what your body needs. Now, to meet that energy requirement, because your body needs this much, you are eating this much. There's a gap. To fulfill that gap, you would still need energy. Your body would use the energy that you have stored in the form of body fat to fuel those needs. Now, the second thing that becomes considerable in this equation is how we structure that calorie deficit of what we eat when we are eating slightly lesser than what our body requires, because then it becomes all more important, right? Because we're eating less. So everything has to be dialed in. We need to focus primarily on proteins, include some sort of fats, focus on creating meals which are high volume, using things like salad, using things like, high volume foods, using fruits, for example, watermelon, papaya, all these kind of things to make sure that the food volume is a lot. And we ensure that couple of things again, protein in the diet is on the higher side, and we are including some sort of weight training or resistance training in the routine as we keep the activity high. So it's a five-step process. First, we reduce the calories, we improve the protein, we add healthy fats, we prefer resistance training, and we increase the activity levels. All of it eventually leads to the person losing body weight eventually, and that weight lost is from the body stored body fat and not from the muscles, right? Because muscle building again is a very slow process. It's very difficult for somebody to even build 5 or 2 3 kilos of muscle mass naturally, to be honest. It doesn't happen that fast. A lot of things have to be dialed in, a lot of factors have to be considered. So the protein and the resistance training part will take care of the muscle building, the cells and signaling, the cell insulin sensitivity, and all that. And the calorie deficit and the high volume food and the activity levels will make sure that you are losing fat, you are losing body weight from the fat and not the muscle mass. Because there's something which happens a lot of times that I get a lot of clients. They're like, we were at 110 kilos or 100 kilos. Our health parameters were so-so. We lost 20, 25 kilos. Now we have health issues. The reason being, once you lose that weight, along with that weight, you also lost a lot of muscle mass. Because you also lost a lot of muscle mass, your body completely became insulin resistant, and as a result of that, you develop diabetes.
Hmm.
So now it's important in that case, not just to lose weight, but to lose weight in the right way. Because if not done properly, it can lead to some other problems, either developing of type 2 diabetes, either degradation of bones and joints in certain situations. Either it can lead to autoimmune disorders or some sort of inflammation, long-term inflammation, which might not be the most best thing to happen to somebody. So it's really important to make sure how we lose the weight. Losing weight is simple. मैं हाथ काट दूंगा किसी का वेट अपने आप 2.5 किलो कम, but that doesn't serve the purpose. We have to understand the whole equation, and then uske according we have to proceed.
The interesting part is that crash diets don't work. They can cause a lot of other issues also. And not only that, they might get some deficits also in the body. Mineral
True.
deficits, yeah,
Micronutrient deficiencies are very common on
common.
आजकल जो आप देखते हो, अभी मैंने कुछ दिन पहले एक रील देखी कि आपको प्रोटीन खाना है अगर, तो एक वड़ा पाव में होते हैं 9 ग्राम प्रोटीन, एक वड़ा में होता है, आप 2 वड़ा खा लो तो 18 ग्राम प्रोटीन पूरा हो जाएगा आपका. So if you feel like completing a protein intake, have 2 vadas. Now there's nothing wrong, even if actually or if we think it's correct, which is not. But let's assume कि if vadas have 9 grams of protein, it still cannot be cornerstone of a diet. आप बाहर का खाना खाते हुए आप, if it fits in your macros करते हुए, or if you just try to think from just a calorie perspective कि हाँ, everything calories are same, I'm just equating things, then eventually you are going to have micronutrient deficiencies, you are going to have फीलिंग टायर्ड ऑल डे. हम काफी लोगों को लगता है कि दिन भर थकान लग रही है, दिन भर ऐसे प्यास सी लग रही है, दिन भर सर दर्द हो रहा है, चाय पी लो. पहला रिस्पॉन्स होता है चाय पी लो. सर दर्द हो रहा है, चाय पी लो, कॉफी पी लो. ठीक है. तो ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर एडिंग अप समवेयर इन आवर लाइफस्टाइल. हम कहीं ना कहीं वो सारी गलतियां करते हैं. हम जब if we are eating outside food, if we are focusing, we are not focusing on creating a balanced diet which has nuts, seeds, fruits, local seasonal vegetables, sources of protein, dairy, grains in its totality. 110% चांसेस है कि आगे जाकर कोई ना कोई माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट डिफिशियंसी होगी ही होगी, which is going to affect the body and show in a different form. हो सकता है मसूड़े की प्रॉब्लम हो जाए, हो सकता है बाल झड़ने लगे, हो सकता है you have eyesight problems, हो सकता है your bones become painful and start paining more. You might develop certain issues in the body. So it's really important not just to lose diet, no, not just to lose weight using diet, but also understand what हाउ टू ईट राइट एंड हैव अ बैलेंस्ड डाइट. जो स्कूल में पढ़ाते थे ना, एक एक पन्ना होता था, उसमें बैलेंस डाइट की फोटोज होती थी. तो वी हैव स्टॉप्ड ईटिंग लाइक दैट फॉर मोस्ट पार्ट ऑफ इट. अगर वो भी कर लेंगे हम ना, तो फिर वी डोंट नीड एनी डाइट और समथिंग. वो एक पिरामिड वाली फोटो होती थी सेकंड या थर्ड क्लास में, and that is enough to keep people's health in check. But that's the reality. We don't, most of us are not eating like adults. We are eating like कि there is no tomorrow. आज जिंदगी है, कल खा लो. कल ही मुझसे किसी ने पूछा ऑन ट्विटर कि अगर कोई पूछे कि एक ही जिंदगी है, खा लो, तो क्या करना चाहिए. तो मैंने बोला कि इट मेक्स मोर सेंस राइट, कि एक ही जिंदगी है तो ध्यान रखना चाहिए. अगर तीन चार होती तो यू कुड बी अ बिट रेकलेस एंड सी कि हाँ यार, देखा जाएगा, फिर से रिस्पॉन्ड कर जाएगा. बट इट्स ओनली वंस, सो यू हैव टू बी इवन मोर केयरफुल विद दैट रिगार्ड. सो या.
So going down slightly on the calories, not going into the crash diets, because what I understand from it, and to just help our listeners understand this, that the moment we go on the crash diets, our body goes into the battery saving mode, and the body stops uh, non-essential functions, like you mentioned, losing hair, uh, spoiling your gums, eyesight going. So that all takes place. And if we were to go reverse of it, somebody who's trying to build a physique, gain muscles. So most of the times we see that people go on a very heavy diet, bulking, thinking that we are actually gaining a lot of muscles. So what
True,
is
true.
the correct way of gaining muscles or building a physique, calorie wise? And now I'm saying calorie wise, sticking.
अभी अभी there's a latest research, which is very latest, like last few weeks में this has started coming in, which shows that there is no actual evidence of a caloric surplus on trained individuals when it comes to building muscle.
Hmm.
But then again, we have to look at research. Just because some research says something, it might not always be true. There's a
Hmm.
counter side to it, क्योंकि research, especially in exercise science, is very difficult to do. Muscle building is something which is influenced by a lot of factors: stress levels, sleep, how you train in the gym, your nutrition. A lot of things are into picture. Your hormone levels, your age levels, your recovery levels, and number of things. And it's not possible to standardize everything, even if there's a group. But let's say, so the first thing that is out of the window is dirty bulking. कि muscle building के नाम पे आप बहुत ज्यादा खा रहे हो. ठीक है, you are trying to just put on weight for the sake of putting on weight. It is not going to help you. It is not going to help you put on muscle. It is just going to make you body fat. It also is going to mess up your lipid profile and your internal health markers. वैसे अगर आप बस scale पे weight बढ़ा रहे हो, it's not going to in any way help your insulin sensitivity. In fact, it is going to make it worsen. आप insulin resistant हो जाओगे, आपके type 2 diabetes के chances बढ़ जाएंगे, आपके cholesterol और आपके blood pressure के chances बढ़ जाएंगे if you are putting on too much weight too frequently. Your thyroid glands will take a hit. So it's a health disaster waiting to happen if you take it. If you're just focusing on putting on weight for the sake of putting on weight, which again is context dependent. कोई अगर 60 किलो का है, 6 फीट का इंसान, तो उसको 10-15 किलो वो गेन कर सकता है, right? But for somebody who is 85 or 80, they can't possibly gain 15 kilos of lean tissue or weight, and most of it being muscle. It's not going to happen. So you also have to understand कि जो process है वो बहुत ही slow process होने वाला है for most people. They'll probably gain a kilo or two of muscle in a whole year if everything is right. Right. So rather than focusing on pushing the weight up until unless कोई बहुत ही underweight है, then it makes sense कि हाँ ठीक है, 60 से आप 70 पे आ गए, at least अब कपड़े तो fit हो रहे हैं. But if somebody is within that healthy weight range, the focus should be that eating should support your training. As simple as that. That's how I prefer to do it with myself, and that's how I prefer to do it with all my clients also. Giving you food just enough that your training is consistently improving, your progressive overload is happening, provided that you are sleeping, provided that you are taking care of your recovery, provided that you are taking care of your hydration, वो अपने आप वो चीज होगी, right? But if I just add on calories और मैं calories पर calories add करते जा रहा हूँ और आपका जिम में परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव नहीं कर रहा है, आप पहले भी 10 किलो उठा रहे थे, अभी भी आप 10 किलो उठा रहे हो, it is not going to give you any stimulus. So basically the training has to drive food. Possibly एक point के बाद जाके क्या होगा कि आपने चलो मान लो with the current food intake that you have, let's say you started lifting 10 kilos. Over a period of time, you are able to do more reps. ठीक है, फिर होगा क्या कि आप शायद वेट बढ़ा लो, 12.5 पे आ जाओ, 15 पे आ जाओ, रेप्स बढ़ाते जाओ, या इंक्रीजिंग द रेप्स थ्रू आउट. Now, after a point of time, you realize that this much food is just making me lift this much. So possibly I can probably add a banana in my day-to-day schedule and see if that an extra 100 calories can help me push a slight bit more. ठीक है, so the training has to be the food has to be such that it fuels the training. अगर आप बैठे हुए हो सारा दिन, from which most of us are sitting in front of a laptop, we don't need much food in first place. एक और चीज है, कल मुझसे कोई कहता है कि एक रील देखी उन्होंने कि 25 किलोमीटर दिन का दौड़ो और जो मन में आए सो खाओ. तो बहुत ही ट्रिकी सिचुएशन है. जो मन में आए खाओ इज वेरी समथिंग दैट वी ऑल वांट टू डू, है ना, कि वो तो भाई कौन नहीं चाहेगा कि अगर मैं आपको बोलूं कि आप जो मन आए खाओ, यू वुड वांट दैट. बट उसके पहले कंडीशन लगा रखी है कि 25 किलोमीटर भागो फिर जो मन में आए सो खाओ. And a lot of people take that as a fitness advice. Going back to our original question of how to filter out. तो आप देखो तो इसमें कुछ भी बुरा नहीं है कि हाँ ठीक है 25 किलोमीटर भाग लो और फिर खाना खा लो जो मर्जी है. इट अपील्स टू द ह्यूमन साइकी, क्योंकि आपको एक चीज अलाउ की जा रही है जो कि आपको लग रहा है कि नहीं करनी पड़ेगी, नहीं आप कर सकते हो. लेकिन उसके पहले एक ऐसी चीज है विच मोस्ट पीपल हु आर इवन फिट वुड नॉट बी एबल टू डू विदाउट हैविंग टू ट्रेन फॉर इट स्पेसिफिकली. कि 25 किलोमीटर भागना है हर दिन, वो भी इट्स समथिंग इवन फिट ऑफ द फिट पीपल. दिस साइकिल जो मैराथन भी भागते हैं, वो एक दिन 10, एक दिन 5, एक दिन 2, फिर एक दिन 10 ऐसे करके भागते हैं. तो दिस इज सस्टेनेबल. तो वो चीज है.
Okay. You know, interesting. You got this thing about जो भी खाना है, you can go ahead and eat. So I'm just wondering, we Indians, be it we're so used to having a thali. So be it Indian, I mean the North Indian thali or the South Indian thali. So what is your thoughts on that? How, I mean, we are used to eating it so often. So
See, the typical thali and the festive thali are two different things.
okay.
ठीक है. First, let's understand that the thali that we eat at home and the thali that the festive thali is two different things.
Hmm.
So, let's say I go to a typical South Indian home. I'll have rice, I'll have papad, I'll have sambar, I'll have rasam, I'll have a green vegetable there. I'll have
Hmm.
some curd, I'll have some buttermilk. This is the typical day-to-day thali.
Ah, pakka.
Right? If I go to a wedding function, if I go to probably MTR or something, they'll have a couple of puris also. They'll have a couple of sweet dishes also. They'll have the vegetable, the gravy with preparation with much oil as well.
Hmm.
Right? So I'm not going to talk, I'm talking about that in later. But firstly, we'll talk about the ghar ki thali, jo like lunch preparation, hai, rice, rasam, sambar, dal, everything else. So firstly, we need to understand that nothing is absolute. Everything has certain issues. Everything has certain advantages, certain disadvantages. All these are certain tools which are required for us to make our health better, right? We have to see what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and how can we make it work for us in the long run. As simple as that. So if you look at a typical South Indian thali for that matter, which has rice, curd, buttermilk, sambar, rasam, some green veggies, I think of it as pretty balanced, except that it's slightly low on protein, low on protein. But it has carbs, good carbs in terms of rice, which is easily digestible carbs. It has probiotics in terms of curd and buttermilk, also some calcium and protein, a little bit of there. You also have a bit of green veggies, which could be something seasonal, right? Stir fried with some coconut sprinkled on top, which again takes care of your vitamin D and other such stuff. You again also have sambar and rasam, which are basically spiced, spices which are good for our health and digestion. It has curcumin, it has turmeric, it has, hing, it has asafoetida, hing, and all those things which make the digestion easier, better for the foods to be absorbed. Sambar then again would have tomatoes, which have lycopene. It would have probably drumsticks, which has vitamin A, retinol, which is good for the skin, a lot of other benefits. So overall, it's a good thing that we are looking at. It is quite low in saturated fat for that matter. There's no saturated fat source except for the coconut, which takes also care of the coconut, the oil part, the fat part. So all we need to do is add a bit of protein to it and it's good to go. We don't
Hmm.
have to stop eating the way we are used to eating, right? The second change that we need to do when it comes to thalis, North India in this regard is still a few steps behind because our thalis are still very carb based and it's all not much of probiotics and all. It's still very high in fat and high in calories. South Indian counterparts of those are still slightly better health wise. Now, second thing is key for all these thalis, the main issue comes from couple of factors. Number one is repetition of carb items. That is a major problem, right? Especially, but that's not a major concern if eating at home for most
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
right? We usually choose one carb source to go with. Let's say if I'm just sticking to rice and I'm done. Nobody has rice and idli in the same plate or rice and chapati. Some people do, but it's not everybody every day that does it.
Hmm.
So what I suggest my clients is whenever you are eating something, try and understand your plate. That is very important. And once you do that, it's only a matter of adjusting the portion size and you don't have to count calories throughout. Well, I, as a coach, can tell you a lot of things, count this, count that, do this, do that. But you, as a busy professional, need to have that bandwidth to be able to do those things in simple words. If I have a kid crying for my attention early in the morning, if I have another kid who I have to drop school early in the morning, if I have to make meals for everyone in the house and I have to rush for work, I cannot expect myself to, weigh every gram of food before to cook before I cook for everybody else. But what I can do is understand the basics of nutrition and understand how the plating works. I call it plating. So what I tell my clients is think of a plate, like a round plate that you have, and divide it into four parts, four quadrants. Now, each quadrant will have something or the other, right? So the first quadrant will have the carbs of your choice. It could be rice, it could be idli, it could be chapati, it could be dosa, it could be any carb source which you are used to eating, which sits well with your gut, which you are comfortable eating, which makes you happy. You don't have to shift to quinoa. You don't have to shift to millets. You don't have to try out things which you don't love doing. You don't have to try brown rice. That one quarter would be the whatever carb source that you are used to eating. Instead of that carb source sticking in the two-thirds or at least half of the plate, we limit it to one quadrant, the one
Hmm.
quarter of the plate. The second quarter of the plate gets veggies, either cooked or raw. Right? So if it's cooked veggies, if it's something like beans or lady's finger or something of that sort, which is easily available, locally available, doesn't have to be asparagus, doesn't have to be lettuce. It can be something as simple as a cabbage. It can be something as simple as the local green leafy vegetables, bathua and chana and sarson and all that that you get on a daily basis in and around you. So something of that sort, if not adding cucumbers, adding some bell peppers, something of which adds to fiber content of the meal. So instead of the rice filling up two-thirds or half of your plate, you now have rice only in one quadrant. Other quadrant, you have, let's say, some veggies, some quadrant of veggies, either cooked or raw. The other quadrant will have some sort of gravy or curry or something like to eat your rice with, basically. So that could be sambar, that could be chana dal, that could be chole. Again, we are not trying to eat a lot of dal. I'm not a big fan of asking people to eat a lot of dal, but it kind of results in gastric problems, especially for older individuals. And even for younger individuals, more than a cup a day is something that is going to most probably lead to flatulence and bloating and all those sort of issues. So one corner of the plate would be again sambar or any of the dals, chole, rajma, not more than that, moong dal, chana dal, whatever gravies or curries could be in that. And that final part of it could be some sort of protein source to add, right? You can add yogurt, you can add curd, you can add paneer or tofu if you're a vegetarian. If you're a non-vegetarian, you can add chicken, fish, or eggs, and that completes your meal, right? So that is a much better way of eating and a much more sustainable way of eating when you look at it from a long-term perspective. Any of your meals could be turned into uh, the more healthy way of eating like this. Like as I said in the beginning of the podcast, creating a middle ground of sorts. So this is the
Hmm.
way I prefer to create that middle ground with my clients. So let's say somebody has poha as breakfast in the morning. I'm saying poha is totally fine. You just add a bit of, let's say 50 grams of paneer उसमें आपने add कर दिया, a fistful of tofu आपने उसमें add कर दिया. आप दाल चावल खा रहे हो, उसके साथ दाल चावल जो भी सब्जी बनी है, भिंडी की सब्जी बनी है, आपने उसके साथ थोड़ा सा सलाद, थोड़ा सा आपने उसमें टोफू ऐड कर दिया या 2 अंडे खा लिए उसके साथ. शाम को आपने भूख लगी तो आपने फ्रूट्स खाया कोई, इंस्टेड ऑफ ईटिंग सम रैंडम जंक आपने कोई, अगेन फ्रूट डजंट हैव टू बी समथिंग एक्सोटिक, फ्रूट डजंट हैव टू बी नहीं कि आपको ब्लूबेरीज खानी है या फिर आपको avocados खाने हैं, anything which you get available locally in your market, which and something which you can keep rotating with. So a lot of people make this mistake कि बस बनाना खा रहे हैं और कुछ नहीं खा रहे. It's again not a lot of variety, so that variety can keep changing. And then again हर मील में कोशिश ये करनी है कि वो चारों जो factors हैं, then we are ticking those off. Even we are eating fruits, probably we can add a scoop of whey या फिर कुछ चने खा लिए साथ में, just to make sure कि वो balanced है एक तरीके से, थोड़ा fiber चला गया, थोड़ा protein चला गया, right? रात के खाने की बारी आई, अगेन वी डू द सेम थिंग. आप जो भी खाते हो उसमें क्वांटिटीज थोड़ी कम की, कुछ एडिशंस किए, कुछ सब्ट्रैक्शंस किए. So rather than focusing on just subtracting foods to lose weight, the idea is to start eating the right kind of foods ताकि आपके पास कचरा खाने के लिए जगह ही ना रहे. अगर आप खा रहे हो अच्छी अच्छी चीजें दिन भर में, if you are taking care of your nutrition, you realize कि it also takes care of a lot of your cravings and a lot of your जो मन कर जाता है खाने का ना कि कुछ खाते हैं आज, कुछ कुछ कचरा खाते हैं, कुछ पिज्जा मंगा लो. And then you don't stop. The idea is not to stop having those foods. You will have those foods once in a while. It's not bad to have those foods. But the problem is कि when you start depending on them for your emotional needs, आपको हर दिन वो craving हो रही है, आपको हर दिन मन करना खराब नहीं है पिज्जा खाने का, हर किसी का मन करता है. हाँ आज पिज्जा खाने का मन कर रहा है, पिज्जा खाएंगे, नथिंग रॉन्ग विद दैट. आपको वो चीज हर दिन हो रही है, सुबह से लेकर शाम तक आप पिज्जा के बारे में ही सोच रहे हो, then it means something is off, and it's probably because your nutrition is not already on point. You are missing out on a lot of things which are making you crave for certain things.
Hmm.
Yeah, so dividing thali into 4 quadrants, and that makes it very sustainable also and easy also. The housewife doesn't have to cook different food for different people. It's the same food being cooked. And there's another
Hmm.
thing which I've come across when I've talked to people about nutrition and fitness, that हमारे घर में बन रहा है, अपने घर में we are putting the right ghee, we are taking the right vegetables, वो खराब कैसे हो सकता है? So it's just a matter of quantifying it properly, putting the portions in proper balance, and you are on your way towards fitness.
True, true.
So, and that also points out towards 2 things, Shobhan. The first thing being that carbs and fats are not actually villains they are made out to be when a person wants to get fit or wants to lose weight.
True,
क्या करना है, रात को फुल्का खाना बंद कर दो. क्या करना है, फैट बिल्कुल बंद कर दो. They also have their own importance in our diet,
true,
in
true,
our
true.
lifestyles. So when you set up a meal plan or a diet plan, so what I understand is you take care of calories, you take care of protein, then you take care of your carb and fat also.
True.
So what is the exact preference levels? How do you go about it, and how do you manage the carbs and the fat ratio along with protein?
First thing first, it depends client to client. There is no fixed rule of how to go about the whole process. For a lot of people who have abysmal eating habits, I don't bother with calories only. क्योंकि मेरे को पता है कि this person has been unknowingly consuming 4,000 calories of junk or 4,500 calories of junk. So if I try creating a deficit and if I try putting them on 4,200, it's not going to work. That's going to be a lot of clean eating of 4,200 calories. So I would just rather than put them on a calorie deficit of from their actual अभी जो खा रहे हैं उससे 2,000 calories पे डाला, but 2,000 calories of whole nutritious foods, 2,500 calories of whole nutritious foods. इसमें fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, all those things रहेंगे, protein रहेगा, dairy products रहेंगे, grains रहेगा. So first priority, obviously, if somebody is trying to lose fat, is creating that calorie deficit. But चीजें वहां से शुरू भी होती हैं और खत्म भी हो जाती हैं. If you look at it कि हाँ ठीक है वो कर लिया तो fat loss हो जाएगा, weight loss हो जाएगा. If you want to improve health, if you want to stick to the fat loss if you want to improve how you feel throughout the day, if you want to improve how you function throughout the day, even at night. तो आपको उसके लिए कोशिश करनी पड़ेगी कि what foods you are eating has to be in a particular ratio, right? Again, if somebody is just starting out, I'll do the calculations myself and I would give them approximations to go with. कि अगर कोई बिल्कुल भी प्रोटीन नहीं खा रहा है और उनको मैं बोलूं कि थोड़ा सा पनीर खा लेना हर मील में, that is more easy for them to start off at that point rather than me telling them कि हर दिन 100 ग्राम पनीर खाना है. That kind of creates a
Hmm.
block for a lot of people. ठीक
Hmm.
है, अगर आज 4 पीस खाए कल 6 पीस भी खाए तो वो एड अप हो तो रहा है दिन बर दिन, right? But what I tell is कि in the order of priority, the first thing would be calories, the second would be protein and fats.
Hmm.
Equal importance देता हूँ मैं दोनों को, क्योंकि protein, again, as we talked about, is responsible for maintaining muscle. It's also responsible for satiety, so that you keep feeling full enough. It's important that you eat enough protein so that your overall health improves. Hair, skin, nails quality, immunity, सबके लिए protein जरूरी है. So that takes care of that part. Fat is important to maintain the hormonal function and to make sure that the lipid profile of the person is in check. That is really very
Hmm.
important.
Hmm.
And यहाँ पर फिर बात it gets slightly deeper, wherein अगर let's say if somebody जो recommendation है which is around 0.6 to 0.8 grams of fat per kg of body weight, if I'm not wrong. So using that, let's say somebody has 40 to 50 grams of fat consumption in a day, जो कि mostly लोगों का होना चाहिए. आगे पीछे थोड़ा बहुत depend करेगा based on body weight and stuff, but 40 to 60 grams of fat, let's say if somebody needs to have on a day-to-day basis, where those 40 grams of fat is coming from becomes even more crucial and important. I
Hmm.
don't want all of it to be saturated fat. I don't want all of it to be coming from ghee. I don't want all of it to be coming from food items which can possibly cause a lot of inflammation, like seed oils and stuff. I would rather stick to food sources. I would not also want to add food items which can increase omega 6, because again, that would cause a lot of inflammation. I would want to stick to sources which are polyunsaturated or monounsaturated, उसमें saturated fat not more than 10% of it, but making sure that whatever items I'm choosing for that 50, 40 grams of total fat intake are high quality fat sources, which basically contribute to a better lipid profile and basically improve HDL, improve total cholesterol, improve the blood profile markers overall उस तरीके से. तो उसमें उस चीज का ध्यान रखना जरूरी है कि आप ऑलिव ऑयल यूज कर रहे हो, अगर कर रहे हो तो, अगर आप बाकी चीजें यूज कर रहे हो, वॉलनट्स अगर आप यूज कर सकते हो तो वॉलनट्स यूज कर रहे हो, अगर आप फिश कंज्यूम कर सकते हो तो कपल ऑफ टाइम्स, 2-3 टाइम्स इन वीक आप फिश कंज्यूम कर रहे हो. So all those things to ensure that the fat intake is on point and that hormones don't get affected during the cut, which is really very important, क्योंकि आपका जो भी हॉर्मोन्स है, टेस्टोस्टेरोन है, आपका एस्ट्रोजन है, और वॉट एवर अदर हॉर्मोन्स आल्सो, इट्स ऑल मेड ऑफ फैट. Not having enough fats in your diet is also going to make absorption of the fat soluble vitamins difficult for you, especially in a fat loss phase, because your body is already losing the stored fat. So you're already losing on the stored vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, जो है body में. So if your diet doesn't have enough dietary fat, it would be difficult for the vitamins to get mobilized and used in your body. तो वो जरूरी हो जाता है कि आप प्रोटीन और फैट्स का ध्यान रखो. इसके बाद जो बचता है वो आता है कार्ब्स. So what I do for most people is, even right now, even without looking for the calories as such, I, based on their eating habits, suggest them protein sources for each meal. कि ठीक है, सुबह आपने ये खा लिया, दोपहर को आपने ये खा लिया, रात को आपने ये खा लिया, 2 या 3 सोर्सेज के बीच में ऑल्टरनेट करके. फैट्स के लिए आपको अगर आलमंड्स हो सकते हो तो आपको आलमंड्स लेने हैं, या जो भी आपका तेल यूज करना है वो तेल यूज करना है, नॉन फैट आपका वो हो गया. आप जहाँ पे उसके बाद जो भी बचता है, that would be based on your activity levels. So if you are somebody who is too active, who is very physically active, who needs to work out, or who has a very moving job, well, we can start with more carbs. If you are somebody who is technically very sedent, मतलब lifestyle ही ऐसा है कि आप कितना भी movement force नहीं कर सकते हो. All things said and done, if somebody has a desk job जहां पर उनसे हिला ही नहीं जा सकता है, कैन मतलब सामने से, I cannot ask a surgeon to start moving between his surgery, right? कि आप सेट सर्जरी के बीच में चलना शुरू कर दो, लोग घबरा जाएंगे।
चार चक्कर काटो।
4 चक्कर काट कर आओ, अपने स्टेप्स आप पूरे करो। वो नहीं हो सकता है। If somebody is into something which the kind of work is like that कि वो पॉसिबल नहीं है, तो वहां पर वो चीज नहीं हो सकती। तो वहां पर we'll have to ensure कि we keep the carbs on the lesser end। अगर कोई फिजिकली एक्टिव है तो उसके केस में we can include more carbs। तो it gets like that।
So the correct way to add proteins is go step by step, not go एकदम से
हाँ,
from 0 to 100 or from 50 to 100. It's adding 15,
क्योंकि
20
बहुत
grams.
बार लोगों को मेंटली भी ब्लॉक्स होते हैं ना, प्रोटीन का नाम सुनते लगता है कि अरे क्या खिला रहा है ये, डब्बा तो बेचने नहीं आ गया।
Hmm.
राइट, अगेन प्रोटीन पाउडर्स का भी अपना यूज केस है, नॉट लाइक कि दे आर बैड और दे आर गुड, दे हैव द यूज केस। एंड आई फाइंड इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग कि अगर आप यंग हो, ठीक है, लेट्स से समबडी इज यंगर, दे डोंट हैव द रिसोर्सेज, दे डोंट हैव, कोई कॉलेज स्टूडेंट है, somebody has started earning, तो they find way as a financial constraint also कि वे कैसे
Hmm.
लें हर महीने and all that। Plus, it also kind of makes sense, especially for people starting out, to build a habit of eating real food, ठीक है, in which it can help। But अगर आप, if you are an older individual who is above 50 or 60, a lot of times it's difficult to inculcate newer habits एकदम से, क्योंकि मेंटल ब्लॉक भी बहुत ज्यादा हो रखा है। यू आर यूज टू लिविंग योर लाइफ अ सर्टेन वे, जहां पे आप, यू आर लेस इंक्लाइंड टू चेंज योर वे ऑफ डूइंग थिंग्स। नॉट लाइक इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल, बट लेस इंक्लिनेशन, मैं ये कह रहा हूँ, नॉट लाइक कि नहीं नहीं करना ही नहीं। तो ऐसे में वे, आई फील इन ओल्डर इंडिविजुअल्स इज मोर यूजफुल इन टू गेट इन टू दैट, टू गेट इन टू गेट देम इन टू ड्रिंकिंग वे प्रोटीन और टू स्टार्ट कंज्यूमिंग वे। क्योंकि उनसे ये एक्सपेक्ट करना कि अब वो अपने हर थाली में प्रोटीन लेके बैठेंगे, समटाइम्स गेट्स टू मच टू आस्क फॉर। तो इट्स लाइक अ गेटवे थिंग कि आप पहले उनको वे पिलाओ, दिखाओ कि हाँ ठीक है, और फ्लेवर भी ऐसा चूज करो। अगेन द ट्रिकी थिंग हियर बिकम्स कि द क्वालिटी ऑफ द वे बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट एंड व्हाट ब्रांड यू आर यूजिंग। एंड क्योंकि देयर इज समथिंग नॉट दैट यू विल जस्ट बी यूजिंग फॉर अ डे और टू, यू विल बी यूजिंग इट फॉर अ लॉन्ग टर्म बेसिस। तो वहां पर इट बिकम्स यूजफुल। बट अदरवाइज फॉर मोस्ट पीपल, अगर आप यंगस्टर, इफ यू डोंट हैव अ, क्या कहते हैं, कन्वीनियंस इशू, इट शुडंट बी एन इशू।
So, Shobhan, sorry, Vanita, I'm taking this question in between. I thought this is a little important. So you talked about people above age of 50, 60 adding protein to their diet. Now, as it is, their digestive system is getting compromised at that age. Their
True,
intestinal movements is slowing down and the constipation also sets in. And when we add protein, we all know that protein can tend to get some bloating and some constipation
true, true,
issues.
true.
So how do you manage diet of such individuals, 60, 70, digestive system going down, metabolism going down, and how do you manage that?
See, theory wise, if I go, technically we should be eating more protein as we age. That is true. Okay,
Hmm.
considering the muscle loss and everything else, we need, but the
With,
body requires more protein. But there's a practical side to it as well. If you're not used to eating that, if your body is not accustomed, habit वाली बात भी तो हो जाती है, वो वाली
hmm,
चीज। तो वहां पर again it becomes very individual and context dependent. Let's say I get somebody who has been consuming 20 or 30 grams of protein in their day in an entire life, right? For me, I don't want to put them on 1.5 or even 1 times body weight to start with।
hmm, hmm,
मैं अगर उनको जो उनका करेक्ट स्टेटस है उससे थोड़ा सा बढ़ा भी दूंगा, then it will take care of its own।
hmm,
So let's say somebody is used to having 30 grams of protein per day। Again, I'm not looking to make that guy into a bodybuilder कि उसको मैं 1.5 times का start कराऊं, और एकदम से तो बिल्कुल start नहीं करा सकते। But what we can do is we can probably add half a scoop of whey, let's say, या कोई एक छोटा सा आइटम ऐड कर दिया, ठीक है, 150 ग्राम पनीर ऐड कर दिया एक मील में, दैट्स इट, नथिंग नथिंग मोर देन दैट। तो एग्जिस्टिंग जो बेस लाइन है आप उससे थोड़ा ऊपर हो गए।
hmm, hmm,
एंड अगेन एज आई सेड कि थिंग हैज टू बी रिपीटेड ओवर एंड ओवर अगेन। इट्स नॉट लाइक अगर आपने एक दिन 150 ग्राम प्रोटीन खा लिया तो नेक्स्ट डे आपकी बॉडी बन जाएगी। यू स्टिल हैव टू डू द थिंग 6 months 8 months। सो व्हेन यू स्टार्ट डूइंग इट कि आपने हर दिन कुछ ना कुछ प्रोटीन ऐड किया, आपने थोड़े बहुत लीन सोर्सेज ऐड किए, अगर आप नॉन वेज फूड खाते हो तो आपने वीक में एक दो बारी वो ऐड करना शुरू किया बेस्ड ऑन योर टेस्ट प्रेफरेंस बजट एंड एवरीथिंग एल्स, तो आप बेसलाइन से तो ऊपर जा रहे हो। एंड दैट इज व्हाट मैटर्स कि कल आप यहाँ थे, आज आप यहाँ हो। अगर आप आज यहाँ हो तो ऑब्वियसली यू आर इन बेटर प्लेस देन व्हाट यू वर यस्टरडे एट, एंड दैट इज द होल पॉइंट ऑफ प्रोग्रेस आई गेस, टू बी बेटर। वो रिजल्ट दिखेगा ही दिखेगा, उसमें आप ये नहीं कह सकते हो कि हाँ हाँ, अब रिजल्ट कितना दिखना है वो वाली बात मैटर कर जाती है. यू नॉट एक्सपेक्ट टू बी ईटिंग 50 grams of protein at the age of 55 and expect to look like Sylvester Stallone. How he looks at 55, क्योंकि उसने जीवन भर प्रोटीन खाया है. He has had 25, 30, 40 years of high protein consumption and resistance training to look the way he does. Somebody starting out at the age of 55, अगर वो सोच रहे हैं कि हम 3 महीना खाएंगे तो वैसे दिखेंगे, तो वो बात नहीं है. But the idea is to improve the quality of life of where we are at and not somebody else. अगर आज मैं लेट्स से मेरा हार्ट हेल्थ है कि मैं 1 किलोमीटर नहीं चल सकता हूँ पैदल बिना हाफे हुए, तो कल अगर मैं उसको 5 किलोमीटर कर लेता हूँ, आई डोंट केयर इफ समबडी एल्स इज रनिंग ए मैराथन और नॉट. वो बहुत बात की बात है. दैट्स अ वेरी लेटर क्वेश्चन. करने की आप करने पे आओ तो कर लो, वो वाली चीज है. बट व्हाट रियली मैटर्स इज कि अगर मैं कल नहीं कर पाता था और आज 1 महीने के बाद मैं 1 किलोमीटर बिना हाफ के चल लेता हूँ अगर, so I don't have to look for a place to sit. That's a very good win. That's something to be celebrated. तो बात वही है कि बेसलाइन से ऊपर, थोड़ा ऊपर, थोड़ा ऊपर. तो अगर वो 70-80 ग्राम भी है, 50-60 ग्राम भी है, if they are able to enjoy the process, if they're able to feel healthy and better. 50 साल की एज में ऑलरेडी बहुत सी चीजें सेट इन कर रही होती हैं. when you are have most of the health problems have started, and there's also a sense of loneliness that starts to come in, I guess, because of probably family members leaving, probably your kids leaving. So ऐसे में to add to a completely new routine or to start something totally different from what you have already been used to is a huge thing to ask of anybody. So rather than to go by the book, I would rather expect them to have fun on the way. कि चलो ठीक है, आज ये डिस्कवर कर लिया, अच्छा ये भी ऐसी चीज हो सकती है, अच्छा अंडे रोज खा सकते हैं, इसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. So that's when the real process starts, real progress starts, when they start having fun. कि अच्छा ठीक है, आज हमने ये बना के खाया, आज हम बाहर गए थे, हमने ये नहीं खाया. Like how my father now talks to me, अभी शाम को भी उनका फोन आएगा and he'll tell me his whole day का update, and he'll talk about कि how he refused, रसगुल्ला नहीं खाया, मिठाई नहीं खाई आज ऑफिस में, आज ये नहीं किया, आज वो नहीं किया. Right? To it, for him that is victory. For him that is being better than what he was yesterday. कि पहले अगर सामने किसी ने रखा तो उसे दो उठा लेते थे कि हाँ ठीक है, मिठाई ही तो है, डायबिटीज थोड़ी है. तो वहां से वहां तक का सफर इज अपने आप में इज अ प्रोग्रेस, एंड द प्रोग्रेस इज द रिवॉर्ड आई फील, बिकॉज देयर इज नो एंड गोल. हमें लगता है कि हम 3 महीने की फिटनेस ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन के बाद हम खुश हो जाएंगे, बट सच तो ये है कि फॉर एनीबडी हु हैज डन दिस फॉर अ long enough time frame, you will know for a matter of fact कि once the bug bites you, there is no looking back. आप हमेशा अपनी बॉडी से, अपने आउटकम से डिससेटिस्फाइड रहोगे. You would want to do more. अभी लग रहा है कि वो चीज डेस्टिनेशन है, बट once you reach there, you're like this is just a passing way through it. अभी तो और आगे जाना है वाली चीज.
You know, what according to you, you spoke so much about fitness and all that. So what would you say is say one aspect of maybe let me say nutrition that Indians are yet to awaken to? So
I don't think this question sits well right now, क्योंकि आज के डेट में everybody has that sort of awareness. In fact, we have more awareness than we need to have. ठीक है. The thing is कि we are getting stuck by the lightning. We're getting stuck by the glamour. कोई बाहर से आके बोल रहा है कि this turmeric is healthy, तो हमें लग रहा है कि अच्छा turmeric is healthy. The same thing which happened with yoga. Yoga became yoga, and then it's being sold back to us right now. That's what is happening. Foreigners coming and teaching us yoga, or the yoga retreats being organized all over the world with an emphasis on mindfulness. एक पूरी industry है mindfulness पे, which talks about how mindfulness should be and all that. So that is not something which is indigenous to the West. There's a lot of traditional information. There's a lot of traditional text. There's a lot of cultural subtext when it comes to these things, especially in the East. आप इंडिया में देख लो, China, Japan में देख लो. There's a lot of Buddhism हो गया, Jainism हो गया, Hinduism हो गया. All of these things have incorporated some sort of mindfulness technique in the prayers or whatever. So it's not something that we are not क्या कहते हैं उसको, we are not awakened to it, or we are not probably used to it. In this current age of 5G internet and chat GPT, मुझे लगता है कि जो बाहर हो रहा है आज के डेट में यहाँ पे भी हो रहा है. We have the access to every piece of knowledge there should be. The only thing that we need to start doing is execution. We need to start acting more. We need to start doing things more instead of just sitting and scrolling and turning into a nation of reel scrollers. वो बहुत बड़ा एक पैंडेमिक है जो आने वाला है, तो वो जरूरी है मेरे ख्याल से। इन्फॉर्मेशन तो हर किसी के पास है, हर कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन ले रहा है, बट काम बहुत कम लोग कर रहे हैं उस चीज पे। सो दैट इज समथिंग। क्योंकि मुझे ऐसा लगता है ना कि अगर आपके पास गलत इन्फॉर्मेशन भी है, ठीक है, एज लॉन्ग एज इट्स नॉट समथिंग विच इज कंप्लीटली आउटरेजियस, ये 16वें फ्लोर से लटक जाओ जाके, भाई सुनने में ही खराब लग रहा है, नहीं हो सकता। बट अगर कोई कह रहा है कि रोज 10 किलोमीटर भागो, तो भाग के देखो। अगर कोई कह रहा है कि 1200 कैलोरी खाएगी, तो खा के देखो। एटलीस्ट यू गेट एन आइडिया ऑफ व्हाट इट इज, ऑफ ठीक है ये तो नहीं करना है। आज मैं और इवन शीश जहां पर हैं, वी हैव मेड आवर फेयर शेयर ऑफ मिस्टेक्स व्हेन इट कम्स टू चूजिंग डाइट्स, व्हेन इट कम्स टू डूइंग रेजिस्टेंस ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम, व्हेन इट कम्स टू डूइंग वर्कआउट्स, व्हेन इट कम्स टू थिंकिंग अबाउट रेस्ट एंड रिकवरी, ऑल दोस थिंग्स। आप जब तक गलती नहीं करोगे तब तक आप सीखोगे नहीं। और सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम जो ये है हमारे साथ, स्पेशली इंडिया की अगर बात करें तो, कि ऑल ऑफ अस एज अ सोसाइटी, स्पेशली इन स्कूल्स, हमें ना वो परफेक्शनिस्ट माइंडसेट सिखाया जाता है। माँ बाप घर में बोलते हैं कि तुम ये करो तो ये मिलेगा, स्कूल में टीचर बोल रहा होता है ये होगा तो ये होगा, विच इज गुड, विच इज व्हाट मेक्स अस अस। बट देन अगेन ये परफेक्शनिस्ट माइंडसेट जब आपके लाइफस्टाइल में इम्बाइब होने लगता है, देन यू गेट स्टार्ट सफरिंग फ्रॉम एनालिसिस पैरालिसिस। एंड दैट इज व्हाई लॉट ऑफ एडल्ट्स राइट नाउ आर नॉट एबल टू टेक एक्शन, क्योंकि उनकी कंडीशनिंग वैसी हुई है थ्रू आउट द इयर्स कि बेटा तुमको जो करना है ना परफेक्ट ही करना है, या तो सही करोगे। अरे कोई नंबर नहीं काट रहा है यार, अगर गलत तरीके से भी वेट लॉस कर लिया तो कोई नंबर नहीं काटने वाला, कोई जेल नहीं भेजने वाला। ठीक है कर लिया, ठीक है हेल्थ थोड़ी खराब हो गई, वो इंप्रूव हो सकती है। अनटिल अनलेस यू गेट टू अ पॉइंट ऑफ नो रिटर्न, बॉडी आपकी साइंस देगी उसके पहले। ठीक है, और आज के डेट में अगर आप वो साइंस नहीं समझ पा रहे हो, पढ़ पा रहे हो, एंड इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू कम्युनिकेट दैट, देन आई थिंक देयर इज सम इशू विद व्हाट एंड वेयर यू आर। बट ट्राई करके देखने में जो जो मजा है ना, कि आपको पता चलेगा कि ठीक है ये चीज हो गई, नहीं करनी है ये चीज। एंड दैट इज वेयर एज अ सोसाइटी वी फील, आई फील वी आर लैकिंग, कि हम चीजों को ट्राई नहीं करते हैं उस तरीके से। वी आर स्टिल स्केप्टिकल अबाउट अ लॉट ऑफ न्यू थिंग्स एज अ सोसाइटी, and we like to not be challenged when it comes to our beliefs, जो कि बहुत जरूरी है फॉर ग्रोथ। आप देखो रशिया है या फिर यूएस है, वहां बच्चों को बचपन से ही डाल देते हैं फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग में, फिजिकल एक्टिविटीज में, ठीक है, फिर भी 6 फुट के बच्चे होते हैं वहां पे। हमारे यहाँ नहीं डालते कि हाइट रुक जाएगी, फिर भी लोग यहाँ 5-5 पे घूम रहे हैं। तो ऐसा तो है नहीं कि जिम कर रहे हैं वो 5-5 की हाइट पे, और जो जिम कर रहे हैं वो 6.5-6 फुट के हो रहे हैं वहां पर। बट इट्स मोर टू डू विथ व्हाट वी बिलीव इज बेस्ट, कि हम जो रहते हैं वही बेस्ट है, हम जो करते हैं वही बेस्ट है, हमारा जो तरीका है वही बेस्ट है। तो लैक ऑफ दिस ओपननेस, दिस प्रेजेंस ऑफ क्लोजनेस इन आवर अप्रोच, coupled with a lack of action taking mindset, कि मेरे को एक्शन लेके देखते हैं क्या हो जाएगा। ठीक है, ज्यादा से ज्यादा मेरा पैर टूटेगा, अगर मैं रोज दौड़ूंगा तो क्या होता है, मेरा पैर टूटेगा, ठीक है, लेट मी ट्राई इट आउट। कम से कम मेरा एक्सपीरियंस तो होगा, कम से कम मैं 10 लोगों को बोलूंगा तो कि ये चीज नहीं करनी है आगे जाकर। बट हम सोचते हैं ना कि हम अगर कुछ करेंगे तो हम परफेक्ट ही करेंगे। हम क्यों नहीं डाइट शुरू कर पाते, क्योंकि हम हर कुछ में परफेक्ट डाइट देख रहे हैं। हमें कोई स्क्रॉल आ जाता है जिसमें कहता है कि पनीर नहीं खाना, पनीर दूध का कोई प्रोडक्ट नहीं खाना, तो हमें लगता है कि हाँ ठीक ही है। हमारा उस समय क्या माइंडसेट है, वेयर वी आर इन लाइफ। और ये जो फोन और जो सोशल मीडिया है, इंटरेस्टिंगली इट्स अ वेरी माइंड बॉगलिंग थिंग, कि अगर मैं आपका फोन चला लूं, अगर आप मुझे अपना फोन दो, तो हम एक दूसरे का फोन नहीं चला सकते, नहीं चला पाओगे आप। मैं आपको रील्स खोल के दे दूंगा, आपको आपके मस्त पसंद की रील्स नहीं दिख रही है, मेरे को मेरे पसंद की नहीं दिख रही, वो इतना इंडिविजुअलाइज्ड है दोनों के लिए। तो आप लाइफ में जहां हो वो आपके फोन को भी पता है, तो फिर वो आपको चीजें भी वही दिखाता है, कि ठीक है जो आपके बायस को कंफर्म करे, बिकॉज दैट्स हाउ द साइकोलॉजी वर्क्स, कि आप तभी मेरी बात सुनोगे। अगर मैं आपको रियलिटी चेक देने लगूंगा बात बात पे, आप बोलोगे बंद करो यार ये नहीं देखना क्या। आई नीड टू कंफर्म टू योर बायस एवरी टाइम। ना आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि अब क्या कहते हैं कि यू नीड मनी टू बी फिट, नॉट एट ऑल। अगर पैसे चाहिए होते फिट होने के लिए तो अंबानी का बेटा सबसे ज्यादा फिट होता। बट जब तक आप ये देखते रहोगे ना कि 100 रुपए में प्रोटीन कैसे पूरा करें, यू विल स्टिल बी ईटिंग दैट लो क्वालिटी फूड्स। आपको वही दिखाया जाता रहेगा, आपको आपकी सिचुएशन को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए हर एक रीजन दिया जाता रहेगा। उसको आप नॉस्टैल्जिया में फंसा के दिया जाएगा, वो किसी प्रोडक्ट के थ्रू दिया जाएगा, बट people want you to be in that same situation because once you start taking action, once you start changing yourself, you start also letting go of a lot of things and attachments that you were used to. और वो जो है वो बाकी इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। अच्छा ठीक है, आपने जोमेटो से ऑर्डर करना छोड़ दिया, अरे वाह। फिर आपने फिर बाहर खाना भी छोड़ दिया, अरे फिर और दिक्कत। फिर आपने बाहर कपड़े नए नए खरीदना शुरू कर छोड़ दिया, क्योंकि आप मोटे होते जा रहे थे तो आपके कपड़े भी तो बढ़ रहे थे, हर हर कुछ दिन पे आपको साइज नया लेना पड़ता था। अब आप फिट हो तो आपके पुराने 5 साल के कपड़े भी आपको फिट आ रहे हैं। तो अगर आप फिट हो गए, अगर आप, तो इट्स नॉट अ वेरी मनी कंज्यूमिंग प्रोसेस, बट आपका फिट होना बाकी लोगों को कंगाल करता है, बिकॉज यू आर टेकिंग दैट पावर अवे फ्रॉम देम। और ये चीज जो है लोगों को पसंद नहीं आती।
टेकिंग पावर अवे फ्रॉम बिजनेस हाउसेज हु आर मेकिंग मनी आउट ऑफ इट, आपको उसी रट में फंसा के रखा हुआ है, and you're falling prey to it. You just click on one particular thing and that thing keeps on coming to your phone, and they're selling it. They are psychologically affecting your mind morning, evening.
True.
So before we move to our second part of the episode, which is fitness, I have just one more question towards nutrition, which I would like you to address to. जब हम लोग फिटनेस की जर्नी पे जाते हैं या वेट लॉस जर्नी पे जाते हैं, वी गो ऑन स्लाइटली कैलोरी डेफिसिट या मेंटेन आवर कैलोरीज, but then this is life, things happen, you can either get injuries, you get sickness. What is the change that a person should bring in their eating habits when they go through this cycle of maybe this phase of injury or sickness? How to handle nutrition at that point of time?
Couple of things. एक तो फैट तो उतना ही रहेगा, इट्स बेसिक। तो फैट को चेंज करने की जरूरत नहीं है, द अमाउंट ऑफ फैट समबडी ईट्स स्टेज द सेम। व्हेन इट कम्स टू प्रोटीन, इट डिपेंड्स कि इंजरी के पहले वो इंसान कितना खा रहा था। लेट्स से somebody is eating 2x और 1.5x, तो उसको कम करके 1x पे ला सकते हैं अगर दैट पर्सन इज नॉट एबल टू ईट दैट मच। अगर खा सकता है तो फिर ठीक है, अगर कोई ऑलरेडी कम खा रहा है तो उसको भी नहीं छेड़ना, उसको उतने पे रखना है। What I like to do is, क्योंकि again, if somebody is injured, तो they are most likely not going to be moving as much. तो मैं उनके कार्ब्स की जो कैलोरीज हैं उसको कम करके उनको मेंटेनेंस पे लाके या छोटा सा डेफिसिट दूंगा, ताकि उनका वेट या तो बढ़े भी नहीं, या फिर इतना भी ज्यादा कम नहीं करूंगा कि उनको फिर न्यूट्रिशनल डिफिशियंसीज होने लगे। तो उसके लिए प्रोटीन्स और फैट्स एनफ रहे, और मेंटेनेंस के अराउंड, कि मेंटेनेंस या 100-200 कैलोरी का डेफिसिट। क्योंकि बहुत से लोगों में ये भी होता है कि वंस यू ड्रॉप द फिजिकल एक्टिविटी, भूख भी मर जाती है, खाने का मन नहीं करता, या फिर आप तबीयत खराब है तो यू वुड नॉट वांट टू ईट एज मच, है ना। यू वुड वांट टू बस ईट, खिचड़ी खिला दे कोई, थोड़ा सा मतलब ऐसा खा लें, तो वो वाली फीलिंग रहती है। तो उसमें आप किसी को फोर्स कर रहे हो कि नहीं नहीं आपको चिकन ब्रेस्ट ही खाना है। और अगेन डिपेंड्स ऑन द सिकनेस ऑल्सो। या किसी को उल्टियां हो रही है, तबीयत खराब है, तो वहां पे आप उनको नहीं बोलोगे कि नहीं यार मेरे को 100 ग्राम प्रोटीन करके दे पूरा। बोलोगे ठीक है 2-3 दिन की बात है, डजंट मैटर मच। अगर वो छोटा सा इन्फेक्शन है या कुछ पेट खराब है, तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, 2-3 दिन की बात है, वी कैन ऑब्वियसली शिफ्ट टू सूप्स एंड स्टफ, एंड खिचड़ी खा ली 2 दिन, अपना हल्का कुछ खा लिया, दही वगैरह ले लिया।
Here I'm talking about the longish things. Supposing you fracture your leg or you have a longish sickness. So how do you
इन दैट
manage your
केस, हाँ, इन
nutrition at
दैट
that point
केस
of
अगर
time?
प्रोटीन बहुत, अगर वर्कआउट वगैरह कर रहे थे अब नहीं कर रहे, तो थोड़ा प्रोटीन कम कर सकते। इफ इट्स अ लॉट, अगर लेट्स अगर 150 ग्राम्स खा रहा था तो वो 100 ग्राम्स पे आ जाए, नॉट गोइंग टू डू अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंस। क्योंकि कई बार लोगों को लगता है ना कि प्रोटीन इज व्हाट ड्राइव्स द मसल ग्रोथ, इट्स नॉट, इट्स द मैकेनिकल टेंशन फ्रॉम द वर्कआउट्स। आप 200 ग्राम प्रोटीन भी खाओ, वर्कआउट अगर नहीं कर रहे हो, यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू होल्ड ऑन टू द टिश्यू। तो अगर वो इतना आप खा रहे हो कि आपका अगेन बेसलाइन स्टैब्लिश्ड है, तो दैट सर्व्स द पर्पस। अगेन एक्टिविटी क्योंकि आपकी नहीं रहेगी उस पीरियड में, कंपैरेटिवली हाउ यू वर एक्टिव व्हेन यू वर फिटर, तो उसमें कार्ब से थोड़ी कैलोरीज ड्रॉप की जा सकती है। कि लेट्स अगर आप पहले 4 रोटी खा रहे थे तो 2 रोटी पे आ जाओ, 100 ग्राम ओट्स था तो 50 ग्राम ओट्स पे आ जाओ, ठीक है। अगर फ्रूट्स 4 केले या 2 केले 3 केले खा रहे थे तो 1 केले पे आ जाओ, समथिंग ऑफ दैट सॉर्ट। बट एज सच कोई बहुत ज्यादा चेंजेस मैं नहीं करता हूँ। आई डोंट प्रेफर डूइंग अ लॉट ऑफ चेंजेस व्हेन समबडी इज इंजर्ड और सिक, एंड मोस्ट ऑफ इट वुड बी डिपेंडेंट ऑन द फीडबैक, कि क्लाइंट को कैसा लग रहा है, व्हाट आर दे फीलिंग, हाउ आर दे एबल टू एडजस्ट टू इट। तो अगेन इट्स ऑल टेलर्ड, ऑल कस्टमाइज्ड इन ट्रू सेंस। अगर कोई बोले कि मुझे मेरा पेट दुख रहा है, या फिर मैं नहीं खा पा रहा हूँ इतना प्रोटीन, नहीं जम रहा है मेरे को, या फिर मुझे फैट इतना नहीं जम रहा, पुट मी ऑन हाई कार्ब लो फैट, तो उसके हिसाब से उस तरीके से चीजों को मॉड्यूलेट किया जा सकता है। कई बार अगर
Right.
कैलोरीज मैच करना जरूरी है कि वी डोंट वांट टू लूज द वेट इन सर्टेन केसेस, कि लेट्स से वी हैव अ वेट क्लास टू मेक एंड वी डोंट वांट टू लूज बियॉन्ड अ सर्टेन पॉइंट, तो वहां पे फिर वी कैन प्रेटी मच ऐड फैट्स, हायर फैट्स फॉर अ फ्यू डेज, या फिर फैट्स थोड़ा ज्यादा रख सकते हैं, कार्ब्स थोड़ा कम रख सकते हैं, क्योंकि एक्टिविटी उस तरीके से नहीं है। तो अगेन हाउ द पर्सन इज फीलिंग, हाउ दे आर रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू इट, व्हाट इज देयर फीडबैक, उस पर सब कुछ डिपेंड करेगा। बट
And we also have,
टू स्टार्ट विथ प्रोटीन फैट्स को सेम रखते हुए कार्ब्स कम करना इज व्हाट आई यूजुअली स्टार्ट विथ।
and
बाकी
also
हाउ दे से एंड हाउ दे डू उसके हिसाब से भी मॉड्यूलेट थिंग्स।
absolutely, and keep in mind the recovery part of the body also. So that's why you need a learned person like you, a nutritionist to help you out at this point of time. So let's now move to the second part of our episode, that's fitness. So Shobhan, lot of times when a person has to lose weight, they say, I've started exercising. And then at the same time, there's a saying that you can't exercise your way out of bad diet.
True.
So what exactly is like? Obviously, when you exercise, you are losing some calories. You are spending some calories. So we can't take that out. But what exactly is the main purpose of exercise or an activity?
Exercise is pretty much like food. I always say this, not in terms of nutrition, but in terms of how we approach food. Food is obviously calories, food is nutrients, food is macros and micros and all those things. Food is also culture. Food is also what's passed on from generation to generation. Food is also what helps us bind over. Food is was also how we celebrate things. Food is also how we mourn. It's a part of our being. Similarly, exercise को अगर मैं बस calories burn के perspective से देखूं, so it's a very myopic, one-sided view of things. When in fact it is much more than that. And why I say that is कि जब आप exercise को बस इस calorie burning perspective से देखते हो ना, you are missing out on the lot of things, beautiful thing which exercise is, which I believe is it in itself is a celebration of how well your body can move rather than anything else. It's like dance. आप आज कर सकते हो सकता है कल नहीं कर पाओ. It's a blessing to be able to move the way you want to. So that for me is exercise like that. Plus आपका सवाल था कि exercise, why should we approach exercise if not for the calorie burning part of it, which is yeah, exercise helps you get stronger bones, stronger muscles, makes your movement better, lifts your mood. ठीक है, ये सारी चीजें आपको महसूस होंगी जब आप करोगे तो. It also makes you more confident and it also prepares you for your day-to-day tasks in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I believe everybody should exercise. It's a celebration of your being. It's a celebration of you being able to do an activity and a movement. तो वो चीज है उसमें. It obviously has a lot of benefits when it comes to bone density, when it comes to muscle retention, when it comes to longevity and movement, when it comes to mortality. Even people who exercise are supposed to be, according to a lot of researchers, living longer compared to people who don't work out or who have a sedentary lifestyle. तो वो सारी चीजें हैं. People become more confident in the long term कि जब आप लंबे समय तक वर्कआउट करते हो, you have that thing. And the most important thing is कि it's something that you cannot lie about. That is the most important part. I cannot lie about ki I play football. I cannot lie about ki I lift weights. If I walk into a room, you will know ki if I or if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
ठीक है? And that is something. ऐसा क्यों होता है कि when somebody fit walks in, we cannot take our eyes off him or her. कोई भी हो. It's subconsciously deep down we are in admiration of the fact that the person is disciplined, that the person has what it takes to do something over and over again. वो कहीं ना कहीं हमारे मन में वो आ जाता है वो चीज कि नहीं यार, this person must have done something to reach to this point. वो और वो admiration अंदर से आता है. And when you see that in the eyes of people, it also kind of makes you more confident when you are walking into a room full of people. अगर आप ऐसे से बैठे हुए हो, आपका कोई physical personality नहीं है, you're just a slog. After one point, you are going to be, uh, you have to like really make up for it in other departments if you are not very comfortable with your body. Either you have to be very good at what you do, either you have to be very good at what you speak. कहीं ना कहीं आपको compensate करना पड़ेगा. For somebody who looks good and he works out regularly, him or her, they have it easy when it comes to dealing with people, I feel. वो सारे benefits की वजह से everybody should exercise.
Hmm. Shobhan, for me, I keep thinking like the minute people say exercise, so it is so synonymous with going to the gym and something like that. So, say a person who's actually working 9 to 5 and is taking care of a family at home. So, what would be your suggestion for how they can manage these exercises at home and what can they do to prevent muscle loss?
See, given the context of the question we have, I would believe that this person at this point of life does not have any movement in their life. So
Hmm.
the first thing that we need to add and address here is movement, physical movement.
Hmm.
It could be going for a walk, it could be swimming, it could be playing with their probably badminton with their friends couple of times a week, 2, 3 times a week. It could be going for an early morning jog. It could be even playing something as basic as TT with your friends and family. Let's say over a couple of weeks. It could be something as basic as going on hikes or treks in the on the weekends. So the first priority is getting movement back. Okay, that
Hmm.
person is completely sedentary, not doing any movement at all. Once we have movement, when I say exercise, ask my clients to exercise or I myself exercise 4 times a week, hitting the gym 4 times a week. If somebody is too pushy कि नहीं मेरे को करना ही है, I'm like ठीक है चलो 5 days कर लो. I never ask them to do 6 days a week. But I always suggest them to do movement 7 days of the week because the body knows movement and you should be moving your body in one way or the other every day of the week. So the first bird that we have to kill at this point is movement. Add some sort of movement into their daily routine. Something which they enjoy doing, something which they can keep coming back to again and again, because that's really important at this point, wherein they need to have. See, confidence is something that is built only after you have done something for a period of time. It's very rare to be confident when you're doing something for the first time. Never happens. Once if you fumble a couple of times, if you have spent enough time doing it, you'll be confident. And the same thing goes here as well. You need to get into a routine wherein some sort of physical activity is happening. Once that is sorted, once we have ticked that out, we have the next step that is adding some sort of workout movements, exercise modalities, which take care of the bone loss and the muscle loss part. So in that case, again, not everybody is looking to build a physique like John Abraham or go to the gym. But again, it's a catch-22 situation. Going to the gym actually is beneficial in certain regards, considering you can scale up or down a lot of exercises very easily. You don't have to be very creative when it comes to performing certain movements or performing certain exercises. And when you're doing at home, you obviously have that thing of not traveling and you can come and you don't have to schedule out a couple of hours or an hour or half. Because then again, considering the time you would be driving in and out of the traffic and then parking and all that, and that also is an added stress in today's life and times. So again, home workout has its own set of advantages where you don't have to indulge in all that. Gym has its own set of advantages. So rather than thinking in terms of what's better, I would think in terms of what the client can get done at this point. If for them they are not doing anything, adding 3 sets of dumbbell presses, adding 3 sets of dumbbell rows is going to give them results at this point.
Hmm.
Once they have seen the results, they'll come and tell me, Shobhan, can we join a gym nearby? Should we try it? But that should come from them, not from me. Or else I would be imposing कि यहाँ आप ये करो, आप ये चीज करो. I can tell them what not to do if it's something that is outrageously they are trying to do something which is bad. You know, I'm going to lift as much weight as possible on the first week of training itself. So I'll have to come and tell them, don't do it. Like hold on your horses. But otherwise, I just have to, like, as a coach, it's telling the clients what to do, but also a lot of times sitting and watching and just making sure that they are in the lane and not crossing the boundaries. So that would be the second thing.
So coaching remains the same whether you are a life coach or your fitness mentor or a
Yes.
consultant coach. Let the
True,
client lead.
true,
Uh,
true.
so adding a movement to your daily lifestyle. If you're a busy professional, take stairs, park your car a little far apart, take a take a longer walk towards your work. Maybe have your call while you're walking.
आजकल मैं सबको कहता हूँ, नया से शुरू किया है मैंने कि आई टीच माई क्लाइंट सूर्य नमस्कार और गिव मैं पीडीएफ और सूर्य नमस्कार, और मैं कहता हूँ कि हर सुबह आप सूर्य नमस्कार करें, फॉर द सिंपल फैक्ट इट किल्स मल्टीपल बर्ड्स विद अ सिंगल स्टोन. नंबर वन, कि आपको सुबह उठते के साथ सन एक्सपोजर मिल गया, which is good for your vitamin D levels, which also sets your circadian rhythm, तो आपको सोने में रात को प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी. प्लस आप अगर 5-10 मिनट सूर्य नमस्कार कर लेते हो, then you start your day with some physical activity as well, which is part mobility, part strength, part cardiovascular. Like, it's very difficult to categorize Surya Namaskar into either of the modalities. So mobility भी है, strength भी है, cardiovascular element भी है. So something like that really gets the blood flow going at the start of the day itself. And that is something that everybody can do. Housewife हो आप स्कूल जाते हो, आप कॉलेज जाते हो, आप ऑफिस जाते हो, सुबह उठ के 10 मिनट का सूर्य नमस्कार रूटीन, out in the open, if possible, in a balcony or on your rooftop, और अगर possible हो तो पार्क में अगर आप कर सको जहां धूप आ रही है, तो it's the best thing that you can do. उसकी एक बार हैबिट बन गई, आपने सुबह 10 मिनट वॉक करने की हैबिट लगा ली, 10-10-20 मिनट का आपका काम हो गया. ठीक है, ये आप हर दिन कर रहे हो, हर दिन कर रहे हो, हर दिन कर रहे हो. एक आपने फुल बॉडी वर्कआउट ले रखा है, या फुल बॉडी वर्कआउट आपके पास है, आपको पता है आपको हाथ पूरी बॉडी को ट्रेन करना है, और वीक में आप फिर 2 दिन आपने टाइम निकालना है. अगेन अगेन लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स जो कि which cause problems for us Indians is कि लोग ना वीक में 2 दिन जिम जाना नहीं चाहते, उनको लगता है कि पैसा वेस्ट हो जाएगा.
Hmm.
ठीक है कि पैसे दिए हैं यार 30 दिन के, तो मैं 8 दिन जाके टाइम नहीं, या तो वो 30 दिन जाएंगे या फिर जाएंगे ही नहीं. उनको वो मंजूर है कि जाए ही नहीं, घर पे बैठे रहें, फीस पूरी की पूरी सड़ जाए, उनको कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. बट आप उनको बोलो कि आप 2 या 3 दिन का रूटीन बनाओ ना यार, कि मॉर्निंग रूटीन आपने बना लिया कि 10 मिनट मेरे को होम बॉडी वेट वर्कआउट्स करने हैं, थोड़ी स्किपिंग वगैरह कर लूंगा, थोड़ा 10 मिनट की वॉक कर ली, सुबह 20 मिनट का मेरा कांस्टेंट रूटीन है हर दिन का 30 मिनट. उसके अलावा आई नीड टू डू लाइक हाफ एन आवर ट्वाइस अ वीक. जिम गए, हाफ एन आवर वर्कआउट किया, चले आए. सोसाइटी जिम में गए, हाफ एन आवर वर्कआउट किया, चले आए. घर पे डंबल्स वगैरह पड़े हैं, पुलअप्स बार पड़ी है, हाफ एन आवर वर्कआउट किया, चले आए. दिस फॉर मोस्ट पीपल इफ डन फॉर लाइक लॉन्ग एनफ टाइम फ्रेम इज गोइंग टू गिव मोस्ट रिजल्ट्स. इससे ज्यादा की जरूरत नहीं होती है मोस्ट लोगों को. लेकिन प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है ना कि वीक में 2 बार लोग करते नहीं, बोला था कि इससे क्या ही हो जाएगा.
और वैल्यू फॉर
पैसे
मनी
दिए,
भी नहीं है ना.
हाँ
वैल्यू फॉर मनी
पैसे
भी नहीं
पैसे
है.
तो दिए नहीं है, बट आपको वैल्यू फॉर मनी यहाँ पे उसके वैल्यू इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट आउटपुट यू आर गेटिंग उसमें देखना है, नॉट इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ मेनी डेज यू कैन गो एंड पुट योर थंब इम्प्रेशन देयर कि हाँ मेरा आज का भी अटेंडेंस जिम का हो गया. Which is again a lot of
Exactly.
mistake which people do is when they are starting out, when they are starting to lose weight, हर दिन वर्कआउट करना शुरू कर देते हैं, हर दिन जिम जाना शुरू कर देते हैं, या हर दिन मूवमेंट करो. आप अच्छी बात है, हर दिन मूवमेंट करो, बट इट्स नॉट विद समथिंग दैट इज ड्रेनिंग यू एवरी डे, क्योंकि आपकी रेस्ट एंड रिकवरी भी इंपॉर्टेंट है.
Hmm.
आप मोटिवेटेड रहोगे 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 रहोगे, बट आफ्टर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम व्हेन यू आर टायर्ड एंड फटीग्ड यू लाइक यार वो करना ही है यार, बहुत बहुत थकान है, क्योंकि आपने उसको ओवर कर दिया शुरू में ही, आपने सारे स्टोर्स अपने एग्जॉस्ट कर दिए.
So, Shubhan, when it comes to movement, the most basic movement that we've been gifted with and naturally is walking. And it's supposed to be one of the best activities also.
True.
और बहुत सारी reels हैं, they're talking about 10,000 steps or 15,000 steps or so many kilometers in a day that one person should be doing. Now, when it comes to walking, is it the number of steps that are more important or the speed at which you are walking, or just number of steps would be good enough?
Depends on a couple of things actually. पहला तो ये कि आप what are you trying to achieve. ठीक है, तो अगर let's say I am somebody who is totally sedentary, मैं कोई एक्टिविटी नहीं करता हूँ, मैं दिन भर अपने लैपटॉप के आगे रहता हूँ, दिन भर मैं बस अपनी कार उठता हूँ, सुबह लिफ्ट से नीचे जाता हूँ, कार में बैठता हूँ, ऑफिस पहुंचता हूँ, ऑफिस के बेसमेंट से फिर लिफ्ट पकड़ता हूँ, अपने फ्लोर पे निकलता हूँ, वहां पे 100-50 स्टेप्स चले, मैंने अपनी सीट पर बैठा, दिन भर बैठा रहा, शाम को उतरा, सेम प्रोसेस रिपीट, दिन भर के मेरे 1000 स्टेप्स मुश्किल से हो रहे हैं। वहां पर आई कैन प्रोबेबली एड a 30-minute walk to start with and ask the client to start with 4000 steps in a day, क्योंकि वहां पर मेरा गोल है टू गेट सम सॉर्ट ऑफ मूवमेंट इन। ठीक है, वहां पर आई एम ट्राइंग टू गेट द टू काउंटर एक्ट द सेडेंटरी नेचर ऑफ द जॉब बेसिकली, कि अगर कोई इंसान सुबह से शाम तक बैठा हुआ है तो वो सेडेंटरी है, उसको काउंटर एक्ट करने के लिए आई नीड टू गिव देम सर्टेन टारगेट गोल्स। ठीक है, आप ट्राई करो आइडियली टू फिनिश इट थ्रू द डे अगर पॉसिबल हो सके तो। अगेन द टोटल नंबर विल डिपेंड ऑन द लाइफस्टाइल ऑफ द क्लाइंट। अगर कोई डॉक्टर है तो मैं उसको नहीं बोल सकता कि आप सर्जरी के बीच में आप ओटी के बाहर घूमने लगो, पेशेंट पार्टी डर जाएगी, चल क्या रहा है। बट अदरवाइज फॉर लॉट ऑफ पीपल 8 से 10 हजार या 6 से 10 हजार के बीच का टारगेट रेंज में प्रेफर करता हूँ, डिपेंडिंग ऑन वेयर दे आर करेंटली, टू काउंटरैक्ट द साइड इफेक्ट्स ऑफ बीइंग सेडेंटरी।
हम्म,
अब अगर इफ आई एम ट्राइंग to do such walking as such is not going to be a lot metabolically demanding activity, which is
हम्म,
a good thing also कि उसमें बहुत ही low entry barrier है in terms of fitness also. Anybody with different levels of fitness can walk at different speed obviously. ठीक है, when I'm trying to burn calories or when I'm trying to train my cardiovascular system, I might need to focus on speed or getting a certain number of steps within a certain time frame. कि
हम्म,
हाँ ठीक है, बट देन अगेन उसका भी एक लिमिट है कि हाउ क्विकली यू कैन गो बिफोर यू फास्ट वॉकिंग बिकम्स इनटू रनिंग, क्योंकि रनिंग ऑब्वियसली, जॉगिंग ऑब्वियसली बिल्ड्स बर्न्स मोर कैलोरीज देन वॉकिंग, रनिंग ऑब्वियसली बिल्ड्स मोर बर्न्स मोर कैलोरीज देन जॉगिंग, स्प्रिंटिंग अगेन बर्न्स मोर कैलोरीज देन व्हाट रनिंग डज। तो बट वही बात है कि आप स्प्रिंटिंग 10 सेकंड करोगे, उससे ज्यादा नहीं कर सकते हो। वॉकिंग यू कैन डू फॉर एन आवर एंड बर्न्स probably burn similar amount of calories without generating much fatigue. So वो देखना पड़ेगा कि किसके लिए एडवाइस दी जा रही है कि क्या करना है। बट फॉर मोस्ट पीपल इंश्योरिंग कि आप 6 से 8 हजार स्टेप्स चल रहे हो दिन भर का, और 10 हजार अगर कर लो तो बहुत बढ़िया, दैट्स द बेस्ट। उसकी भी एक मार्केटिंग स्ट्रैटेजी थी, वो एक जापानीज स्पीडोमीटर कंपनी का था। 10,000 स्टेप्स इज नो साइंटिफिक बैकग्राउंड टू इट, बट दैट मच ऑफ फिजिकल एक्टिविटी अगर आप कर लेते हो, अगेन मैंने कहा एक रेंज है 6 to 8, 6 to 12 के स्टेप्स अगर आप दिन भर में करते हो, अगर आप फिजिकली मूवमेंट को प्रायोरिटी देते हो, तो उसमें आप लेट से अगर कोई दिन भर 10,000 स्टेप्स कर रहा है, बट अगर आप बस मूवमेंट कर रहे हो बट इट्स नॉट चैलेंजिंग इनफ, तो स्टेप्स तो होंगे आपके, आप कैलोरीज तो बर्न करोगे थोड़ी बहुत, लेकिन उसका कोई आपको कार्डियो रेस्पिरेटरी बेनिफिट नहीं होगा। तो आउट ऑफ दैट 10,000 स्टेप्स अगर आप 2,000 या 3,000 स्टेप्स ऐसे कर सकते हो विच आर स्लाइटली चैलेंजिंग, जैसे आपने इंक्लाइन पे चल लिया, अगर जिम है आपकी सोसाइटी में, आप जहाँ रहते हो आपके आसपास कोई जिम है वहां पे, या फिर आप कुछ भी नहीं है, आप सीढ़ियों पे चढ़ रहे हो लेट से, राइट, वॉकिंग ऑन स्टेयर केस अप एंड डाउन अगर आप कर रहे हो, तो दैट इज बेसिकली वॉकिंग थ्रू एन इंक्लाइन विच इज गोइंग टू बी मोर एग्जॉस्टिंग फॉर योर एंड मोर क्या कहते हैं उसको, इन्वॉल्विंग फॉर योर कार्डियोवास्कुलर सिस्टम, आप ट्रेन कर पाओगे वहां पे। तो आई थिंक अ बैलेंस ऑफ बोथ इज गुड इनफ। अगर आप 10-12 हजार तक दिन के कर रहे हो बट इफ योर कार्डियोवास्कुलर सिस्टम इज वीक, अगर आपका जोन 2 एक्टिविटी उतना नहीं है, तो फिर at the end of the day you'll have certain cardiovascular limitations, so it's better to have both, I feel.
So calorie burn, number of steps are good enough, but if you have to have the additional benefits of walking, cardiovascular system benefits, then you need to put in some speed.
True.
That essentially means some kind of resistance training. So
True.
in the sense, climbing stairs is adding some resistance to it.
एडिंग स्ट्रेस हो गया, आपने सैंड वॉकिंग कर ली, थोड़ा उसको आपने फार्टलेग मेथड से ट्रेन कर लिया, देन यू probably jog for a few seconds and then run for walk for a few seconds, so that again zone 2 ट्रेनिंग इज बेसिकली जहां आपकी हार्ट रेट 120 से 150 के बीच में रहती है। So again, the idea is not to make your heart rate go through the roof, कि आपका एकदम हार्ट रेट बढ़ा हुआ है, आप बात ही नहीं कर पा रहे हो, एंड नॉट इट शुडंट बी लाइक हाउ इट इज राइट नाउ। वो थोड़ा स्ट्रगल होना चाहिए कि आप थोड़ा उसमें आप स्ट्रगल कर रहे हो जोन 2 में, कि आप कन्वर्सेशन तो होल्ड कर रहे हो बट इट्स सम एफर्ट इज रिक्वायर्ड टू कंटिन्यू दैट कन्वर्सेशन, ताकि आप अपने हार्ट और लंग्स को ट्रेन करो। इवेंचुअली दैट इज व्हाट द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट मसल इन योर बॉडी इज, सारे मसल अगर काम कर रहे हैं बट द हार्ट इज नॉट वर्किंग तो फिर कोई पॉइंट नहीं है बाइसेप्स ट्राइसेप्स और शोल्डर्स का. So the heart has to function at its best. That is more important, I feel.
Um, Shobhan, when it comes to weight loss, I keep hearing this word NEAT. So I let you, बड़ा चौड़ा करके आप बोल दो. But what is this NEAT and how is it related to weight loss?
Need is just what we talked about, the overall activity levels of the day. So considering ki, if I were to classify the physical activity somebody performs in a day, I would probably categorize it into two parts. One would be the part wherein I'm actively trying to burn a few calories. I'm putting on my shoes, I'm probably going for a run, I'm doing some Surya Namaskar, or I'm going to the gym, whatever it might be, I'm going for a swim. That is intentional. I'm
Hmm.
exercising with an intent to exercise. That
Hmm.
is what we call exercise activity thermogenesis. Basically, the amount of heat, the amount of calories your body burns, the amount of heat your body releases during those activities. Now, that is the equation, part of the equation, wherein, let's say, in 24 hours of the day, I work out for an hour. I go for half an hour swimming, half an hour weight training. That's 1 hour of exercise activity thermogenesis. The rest of the time, after removing the time for my sleeping and daily activities and stuff, there would also be a lot of unaccounted for movement, like how I twisted my head while saying unaccounted, right? Or I'm nodding right now.
Hmm.
Also, when I'm in my house trying to get things done, like when we started this podcast, I had to get my earphones. So I went to the other room. I had to walk like 10, 15 steps to get to my
Hmm.
earphones. I came back again. Then before we started, I had to go to the kitchen to get my water bottle. And then again 10 steps there. So 10, 10, 20 steps. This 20 steps is my need, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically any amount of activity, any amount of calories that are burned while doing activities which are not related to exercise. Right. So it basically means it's an indicator of how sedentary or non-sedentary an individual is. If somebody
Hmm.
is, again, we are not counting for these small hand movements, head movements, but the movements that we do in terms of walking throughout the day. So somebody who is completely in front of their desk and does not move a lot is has very lower lead, means they are burning a lot less calories than compared to somebody who is up and active throughout the day and moving a lot and is more upbeat and upfront like that. So they are burning more calories with compared to somebody who is more sedentary. So obviously they'll have a slightly better advantage when it comes to losing weight is because they have a higher expenditure. So they don't need to reduce their food intake by a lot of margin when it comes to creating that deficit. They can just drop, let's say, 200 calories from where they are actually eating. And since they are physically active, the weight loss will take place. On the other hand, somebody who's like having 1,000 steps or something, it's very difficult to start off a fat loss because there's only very little margin of how little food you can eat to start with, right? Because if you eat a certain lesser than a certain amount, it's quite likely that you will feel more hungry. You'll have cravings. Your mood might get affected. Your energy levels might get affected. Overall health to baad mein aayega. But in short term, these are the things which can take a hit. So there's only so much, so little that we can go in terms of calories. So it always makes sense to have more activity levels throughout the day and just be much more active basically in terms of what you are doing.
So NEAT has almost equal importance as in regular exercise, or probably more also because being active helps in keeping the food levels good. That also is one of the benefits. We don't have to reduce calories too much. But I'm very happy you mentioned about the small hand movements. Otherwise, somebody sitting in front of the television and eating potato chips would be saying, I'm moving my hands and burning calories along with eating potato chips.
That's true, but हाँ अब हर चीज को ट्रैक नहीं किया जा सकता तो इस goes untracked, but
नहीं
हाँ
वो फिर हो जाएगा ना पोटैटो चिप्स खा रहा होगा तो कहेगा देखो मैं कंज्यूम भी कर रहा हूँ और मैं
कर भी रहा हूँ बर्न भी कर रहा हूँ
एक्सपेंड भी कर
खाते
रहा
खाते
हूँ
एक्सरसाइज.
so Now, one thing which just occurred to me when you were talking about adding, going up the stairs or maybe walking in the sand, adding some kind of resistance which improves the cardiovascular system. So, if we go by that particular logic, resistance training itself also helps in cardiovascular system improvement.
Uh, to an extent, but again, it's like अगर कोई सब्जी है जो मैं कुकर में भी बना सकता हूँ
Hmm.
लेकिन कढ़ाई में बेटर बनेगी वो होती ना कि ठीक है कुकर में बना दिया कढ़ाई में बेटर बनती लेकिन वो वाली चीज है
Hmm. Hmm.
आई कैन गेट द जॉब डन बट इज इट द बेस्ट वे टू गेट इट डन like if you see swimmers they have really good back and shoulders if you look at
Hmm.
cyclists they have really good quads. But is that the best way to go about if you want to build a back, if you want to build a quad? Quite probably no, because you'll have to spend a lot of time cycling or a lot of time swimming. So it does lead to that effect, but that's not the most optimal way to achieve it. क्योंकि आप कहीं ना कुछ चार्ज करोगे अगर उसको आप as a primary tool to improve aerobic fitness use कर रहे हो तो. So I would rather, and again, it creates injury risks, in my opinion. अगर if I'm
Hmm.
trying to get a cardiovascular response from resistance training, तो मुझे obviously अपने रेस्ट पीरियड्स को कॉम्प्रोमाइज करना पड़ेगा तभी उसका कार्डियो रेस्पिरेटरी कंपोनेंट एक्टिवेट होगा एंड व्हेन आई डू दैट आई एम पुटिंग माय सेल्फ एट रिस्क ऑफ ईदर गोइंग इन टू अर्ली इन माय वर्कआउट एंड आई एम नॉट साइकोलॉजिकली और फिजिकली रेडी सो
Hmm.
उसका रिटर्न जो है कार्डियोवास्कुलर तरीके से उतना शायद ना हो बट इट माइट कॉज मी इंजरीज और माइट push me affect my performance and total volume and all those things so I would rather add something which does not generate a lot of fatigue while adding a bit of cardiorespiratory stimulus to the equation. तो उसके लिए वॉकिंग बेस्ट लगता है मुझे कि सबसे इजीली एक्सेसिबल है कोई भी कर सकता है कहीं भी कर सकता है ज्यादा टाइम की जरूरत नहीं है मतलब अगर आपके पास अपने लंच ब्रेक में भी टाइम है अगर आधे घंटे का लंच ब्रेक है आपने 10 मिनट में कर दिया तो फिर भी आप 20 मिनट टहल सकते हो और जब आप 20 मिनट टहलोगे तो आपको किसी को एक्सप्लेन नहीं करना पड़ेगा ऐसे तो कुछ भी एक्सप्लेन करने की किसी को जरूरत नहीं होती है बट देन अगेन सोसाइटल नॉर्म्स होते हैं अगर आप लेट्स से आप स्कूल टीचर हो ठीक है आप लंच ब्रेक आपका आधे घंटे का अगर हो रहा है आपने 10 मिनट में खाना खत्म किया और आपने 20 मिनट टहल लो तो आपको कोई कुछ पूछेगा नहीं अगर आप पुशअप्स करने चालू कर दोगे तो लोग पूछेंगे कि क्या हो गया पागल वागल हो गए हो क्या तो थिंग्स विच यू कैन डू जो आप कहीं भी कर सकते हो उनका सबसे बढ़िया बेड एडवांटेज होता है कि आप वॉकिंग करो तो किसी को पता भी नहीं चल रहा है कि आप वॉकिंग कर रहे हो आप अपना स्टेप्स पूरे कर रहे हो आप चुपचाप कहीं भी अपना फोन पे बात करते हो या फिर गाने सुनते हुए आप कर सकते हो टाइम आपको चुराना पड़ेगा क्योंकि देन अगेन सबके पास सेम 24 घंटे होते हैं लेकिन सबके पास सेम सेट ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज नहीं होती हैं वो
Hmm.
अलग अलग
Hmm.
होती हैं हर किसी के लिए नॉट एवरीबडी इज प्रिविलेज इनफ टू हैव कि सुबह उठ के 1 घंटे की वॉक हो फिर उसके बाद फिर 1 घंटे का वर्कआउट हो फिर घर आए तो नाश्ता बना बनाया मिले doesn't happen for everybody तो फिर वहां पर वी हैव टू बी चतुर चालाक किस्म के लोग होते हैं ना कि जहां मौका मिला जैसे कि आपको अगर अमीर बनना है तो दो तरीके हैं या तो आप बहुत बड़ा हाथ मारो या फिर आप जहां हो सके वहां थोड़े बहुत पैसे बचा लो कि हाँ ठीक है यहाँ कुछ रुपए सेव हो सकते हैं सेम थिंग हेयर ऑल्सो कि आपको अगर देखना है कि या तो आप सब कुछ छोड़ के अब रोज यही काम करो या फिर यू स्टार्ट फाइंडिंग आउट गैप्स कि अच्छा हाँ ठीक है यहाँ गैप है यहाँ मैं ये चीज फिट इन कर सकता हूँ या कर सकती हूँ ठीक है कि अगर मुझे दूध लाना है तो आई वुड नॉट ब्लिंक इट आई वुड रादर गो डाउन एंड गेट इट सिंपल थिंग्स जस्ट टू गेट द एक्टिविटी लेवल्स अप
So the right balance of cardio and resistance training is the way
ट्रू
forward. So now when we talk about resistance training, not everybody is fond of going to the gym
ट्रू
and doing weights and all. People are, and in fact, people find benefit in doing yoga. So between yoga and gymming, what do you prefer for your clients? And secondly, is yoga also helpful in giving the resistance training, the mechanical tension actually, which helps in building muscles?
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन इसमें तो तीन चीजें हैं जो कवर करनी पड़ती हैं जरूरी हैं विच वी नीड टू कवर इज फर्स्टली कि आई डोंट प्रेफर दिस एटीट्यूड ऑफ और मुझे नहीं अच्छा लगता वो सवाल कंसिडरिंग कि
Hmm.
इट काइंड ऑफ बीट्स द बिगर पिक्चर लेकिन एज आई सेड कि एक्सरसाइज इज अ लॉट लाइक कुकिंग every ingredient has its purpose every ingredient comes at a certain time and it serves its own purpose. So rather than thinking of it in terms of binaries, ki yoga or resistance training, I think we should start looking at it ki how we can integrate the best of both modalities to help us, right? Now the problem arises when people think of yoga as something which is easy or something which is less injury prone compared to gymming, क्योंकि काफी लोगों को ये लगता है कि घर पे कर लेंगे या इंजरी प्रोन नहीं होगा। काफी लोग सॉरी टू से बट काम चोरी कर रहे होते हैं। उनको लगता है कि बस ये ऐसे ऐसे थोड़ा करेंगे योगा हो जाएगा, नहीं होगा वो योगा, दैट इज नॉट योगा। ठीक है, yoga in itself is a physically demanding discipline and you would need to have certain strength levels to be able to perform certain asanas, right? बहुत से मयूरासन है, चक्रासन है, बहुत से भुजंगासन है, जो कि आपकी बॉडी को ट्विस्ट टर्न करने के अलावा इट ऑल्सो काइंड ऑफ helps you get stronger, right? And not just in terms of muscles, but also in terms of your joint mobility, in terms of your flexibility. वो सब कुछ करता है. Now the thing with yoga is where most people go wrong is कि either they stick to just basic exercises, very basic exercises. फिर पैरों को पकड़ के बटरफ्लाई की तरह हिलाना वो योगा नहीं है, ठीक है? लोग sometimes a lot of people are trying the easy way out. कि मेहनत नहीं करनी पड़ेगी, प्यार प्यार से हो जाएगा। दैट इज नॉट द केस। योगा भी इंटेंसिव है, योगा भी डिमांडिंग है इफ यू वांट टू डू इट, एंड इट विल रिक्वायर यू months and years of practice to get to a point wherein you are unlocking different asanas. क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं है कि आप जाओगे और आप एक ही दिन सब कुछ कर दोगे। Even if you have the flexibility and the strength, you have to have some skin in the game. तो वहां पे जरूरी हो जाता है कि आपके पास या तो कोई टीचर हो या तो कोई इंस्ट्रक्टर हो जो कि आपको इन पर्सन वो चीजें सिखाए। आप खुद से देख के सीख रहे हो तो आप देख भी रहे हो, कर भी रहे हो, यू आर ओनली गोइंग टू एंजॉय योरसेल्फ। हैविंग सेड दैट, for any individual, I feel कि there should be a balance of both, looking to maximize their health and fitness. So again, it doesn't have to be very exclusive in terms of ये करूंगा या ये करूंगा, ठीक है? It can be a mixture of both of the things. कि अगर let's say I start my, and I believe it's wrong to just classify yoga as just a physical exercise. वो है नहीं। योगा के 7 प्रिंसिपल हैं, यम नियम आहार प्रत्याहार आसन प्राणायाम, उसमें वो एक प्रिंसिपल है। इट इज जस्ट नॉट बॉडी मूवमेंट एंड एक्सरसाइज। रेजिस्टेंस ट्रेनिंग इज जस्ट दैट। योगा का जो आसन वाला पार्ट है, दैट इज व्हाट कंसर्न्स अस, और उसको भी सही से किया जाए तो दैट इज ऑल्सो बेनिफिशियल। तो व्हाट आई प्रेफर इज कि अगर आप अपने रूटीन में यू कैन पिक अप एलिमेंट्स फ्रॉम डिफरेंट थिंग्स एंड यूज इट टू योर एडवांटेज। ठीक है, कि अगर अगर मुझे सब्जी बनानी है तो मुझे थोड़ा टमाटर भी चाहिए, तो मुझे शिमला मिर्च भी चाहिए, थोड़ा मुझे हल्दी भी चाहिए। मैं बस एक इंग्रेडिएंट पे सब्जी नहीं बना सकता हूँ, राइट? कोई इंग्रेडिएंट का काम होगा पंडेंसी देना, कोई इंग्रेडिएंट उसमें झांस लाएगा, कोई इंग्रेडिएंट उसको थोड़ा तीखा बनाएगा, कोई इंग्रेडिएंट हल्की सी मिठास लाएगा। मास्टर शेफ में होता है ना कि वो डालते हैं एक चम्मच, कहते हैं थोड़ी मिठास इसमें ज्यादा है, ये प्लीज कम है। तो वो चीज है कि ठीक है, अगर आप लेट्स से इफ समबडी इज लुकिंग फॉर ओवरऑल बैलेंस्ड रूटीन, तो अब जैसे डेली वॉकिंग से आपका डेली मूवमेंट आ गया, ठीक है, वीक में आपने 2 या 3 दिन 15-20 मिनट ही सही थोड़े बहुत आसन प्रैक्टिस कर लिए, विच काइंड ऑफ हेल्प यू not just with your overall strength but also strengthening the muscles which are kind of overlooked when you are strength training, especially muscles for your hips and your glutes and your core activation. ठीक है, कुछ दिन फिर आपने, और आपने घर में ही आप कर रहे हो, अगर आपको जिम नहीं जाना या फिर आप नहीं जा सकते हो फॉर दैट मैटर, तो ठीक है, 2 दिन में एक दिन सूर्य नमस्कार करूंगा, एक दिन मैं लोअर बॉडी के आसनास करूंगा, एक दिन मैं अपर बॉडी के आसनास करूंगा, क्योंकि उसकी भी सोरनेस होगी। इट इज ऑल्सो गोइंग टू मेक मी सोर एंड अनएबल टू वॉक फॉर अ फ्यू डेज। अगर मैं हैंड स्टैंड प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ, इन्वर्टेड चीजें प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ, इन्वर्टेड आसनास प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ, दैट इज गोइंग टू टेक अ टॉल ऑन माई शोल्डर्स एंड माई चेस्ट एंड माई बैक एंड माई आर्म्स। 2 दिन ये हो गया, 3 दिन, 2 दिन मैंने रेजिस्टेंस ट्रेनिंग कर ली, मैं थोड़े बहुत पुशअप्स कर लिए, थोड़े बहुत स्क्वाट्स कर लिए, थोड़े बहुत लंजेस कर लिए, डेड हैंड्स की प्रैक्टिस कर ली। अगेन दिस इज नॉट, अगर ये 4 एक्सरसाइज में आपको करने बोलूँ, आप बोलोगे इससे मेरी बॉडी बन जाएगी, बिल्कुल नहीं बनेगी, सीधी बात। अगर आप स्क्वाट्स, बॉडी वेट लंजेस, बॉडी वेट पुशअप्स और डेड हैंग करते हो, ये 4 चीजें, तो आपकी बॉडी नहीं बनेगी, बट यू विल बी मच मोर स्ट्रॉन्गर एंड फिटर 6 months डाउन द लाइन। आपके जॉइंट इश्यूज नहीं होंगे, मोबिलिटी इश्यूज नहीं होंगे, आपको सीढ़ी चढ़ने के लिए कहीं जाना पड़ा, किसी की हेल्प लेनी पड़ेगी। तो फिर कोई बात का मतलब नहीं रह जाता.
Right. So now invite Vanita to ask a few questions specifically that women have in their mind when it comes to doing resistance training or taking up a fitness regime. All
Thank
over
you,
to you,
Sirish.
Vanita, now.
Actually, so there is this the taboo time that most women experience periods. So there's always a lot of speculation, I must say, that you're not supposed to exercise or don't do this and all that. So as a fitness and as a coach, so what is what is your recommendation?
Uh, this is a very good question which involves a lot of things to consider. So firstly is कि अगर if a female if they are going through that time of the month, should they work out or not? So can they work out or not is the first question. Is it possible in that time? Yes, it is possible. Technically, it is possible. Should they be doing it is another question. ठीक है, it is okay to work out, but should I be doing it is the next question. Now, this varies person to person. So there are ways wherein you can control the blood flow. Technically, that is the problem at the surface level. There are tampons, there are a number of things which can help with that. But there's another layer to that problem as well, which is much more deeper and which requires attention, is how your mind and your body cooperate during and before those 5, 6 days, right? So a lot of times what happens is, especially in the case of women, they start experiencing a lot of mood swings or cravings for certain kind of foods and changes in how they want to be moving or not. Okay? Like they would want to be spending most of their day in the bed watching probably something or not being as active as they are on the other days of the month. Now, a part of it has to do with how they have been psychologically conditioned since childhood and what they have seen other women around them do it. That is the first thing. So, if somebody is, again, the kind of pain and the amount of pain women go through in periods is different for everybody. Not every woman has the same experience, nor the same flow. So, for people who have less flow, people who don't experience much pain, it's not a big issue. They can scientifically work out without any risk involved, green signal for them. The question comes for people who have too much pain, who have too much flow, or they don't feel comfortable even performing day-to-day tasks during their period times. Now, to start with, when they are starting out with me, initially I ask them to sit it out because it's only a few matter of few days, 4, 5 days, and it's only going to get better after that. But initially, because as we start progressing, if you look at it from a cumulative perspective, that's around, let's say if I take out 5 days every month, that's around 60 days in a year. Now, for somebody who is just concerned about general fitness, it might not be such a big number, but for somebody who is probably an athlete, it probably makes sense to not miss out on those 60 days, right? And you cannot keep breaking the momentum after every 3 weeks of where you want to be. So now the thing is, I ask them a couple of things. First of all, when they're starting out, I don't ask them, I ask them, how do you feel? If you feel like working out, please go ahead. I'll tell you what to do if you say yes to that. If you don't feel like working out, don't force yourself to it, at least for a couple of days and the peak flow days and so. As and when we push in our training and our coaching experience, we spend a couple of months together. The one more thing happens when you start working out regularly, and that is your pain tolerance kind of improves, right? You're able to
Hmm.
push past phases of discomfort, and that's an acquired skill, right? Like for people who are used to, on of let's say अगर मैं खाना बना रहा हूँ और वो रोटी पलटनी है, तो अगर मुझे आदत है पलटने की, तो मैं उसको हाथ से ही पलट दूंगा. आई वोंट रिक्वायर ए चिमटा. क्योंकि हो सकता है
Hmm.
खाना बनाने के टाइम पे मेरा हाथ 1, 2 बारी जला होगा एंड नाउ माय बॉडी इज यूज्ड टू दैट लेवल ऑफ पेन.
Hmm.
So once people start working out, they kind of improve their pain tolerances as well, and then they can start working out. But then again, it has to be a gradual process and it has to come from them. They have to feel better. Technically, they can, but if they want to take a rest or rest it out, it's totally okay. If they want to do it, again, there are ways wherein we can modulate the training to accommodate for the loss in strength and to accommodate that loss in overall, that increase in fatigue levels. So we can manage that. For women, we can schedule the training in a way wherein uh, the week of menstruation is where they are lifting lighter weights for higher repetitions. And as we go away from that, we progress towards heavier weights and lighter repetitions and probably higher intensity of training, wherein we are pushing ourselves more and take that 1 week or 5 days of periods as a way to just relax or train, but not overtrain in a way wherein you are just doing the movement just to get into the habit of things, but not trying to push the envelope in terms of performance. Same thing goes for their food habits as well. What I usually technically do is I play around with the fat levels of the diet around their periods so that
Hmm.
the cravings tend to take a backseat because of the high fat diet, and I include a lot of nuts and seeds into their diet so that they are meeting all sorts of micronutrients and there's no such intermediate deficiency as such, which can cause a lot of cravings and possibly can derail the progress that we have made in the past month. That happens a lot. Somebody would be joining, then they would be doing 3 weeks of things straight up, then probably because of the hormonal changes, they would have some sort of water gain. And because of that emotional fluctuations, they might just end up hogging onto food. So now, when they step up on scale, they see a rise in weight, which is probably because of 1 day of excess eating, which is not again body fat, it is just excess salt and excess carbs in the body. And the excess fluid the body has retained because of hormonal fluctuations. But on this scale, it looks like we have wasted a whole month of working hard and getting the things done. So in that scenario, what I prefer is I adjust the fats to an extent. And again, what another strategy that I prefer using is if the client has control. Again, this would happen much later in the journey when I am more in tune with their eating habits, is when I realize that somebody does not have an eating disorder or a bad relationship with food, wherein they know they can stop with 1 bar of chocolate or 1 bite of chocolate or just one donut. So then I allow them to have a bit of indulgence in during those times while keeping things strict on the other days. So I guess that answers your
Hmm.
queries.
Just
Yes,
one
yes,
thing
it
to
does.
it. Are there any specific exercises they should not be doing? I'm sorry, Vanita. Yeah, please go
Mhm.
ahead.
Heavy exercises, basically squats and deadlifts, which can kind of increase the blood flow and can possibly
Abdomen
abdominal
exercises.
exercises are fine as long as it's not too much of loading in there. But anywhere where you are holding the breath and trying to increase a lot of intra-articular pressure should be avoided, I feel. So a lot of heavy rowing or heavy deadlifting or heavy squats should be avoided. But otherwise, not be an issue.
Okay. Hey, I think my next question is about women in their 40s who are kind of when they're approaching their menopause. So suddenly, till then, the body looks all good, and then you notice this weight gain, and then suddenly, I suddenly see women in their 40s suddenly trying to start gymming and doing so many things just because they don't want to put on weight or anything. So in case there are women who don't want to use the gym, I mean menopausal or perimenopausal women, what would you suggest for them?
See, the first thing would be starting with bodyweight exercises and tailoring them as per their fitness levels. That is the first thing that I I can think of. Like, let's say somebody can not do push-ups, so I would ask them to do incline push-ups or start with chair squats or box squats or variations of it. then considering that this person never has had a history of exercise or resistance training, even some simple stuff like using bottles, like something like this is a 1.5 liter bottle. So to start with, getting this right is going to involve a lot of muscle tissue and a lot of coordination, which is going to develop, and that is what we want. As and when they get comfortable lifting that weight, again, that is what the body will adapt. It will start feeling too light after a point of time. And there's only so much repetitions that you can do without wasting your time. I mean, you can do 100 repetitions with that 1.5 kilo bottle, but for that the set of 100 repetitions to be effective enough, that first 85, 90 reps would just be the build up for the last 10, 15 reps. The actual 10, 15 reps is where the actual stimulus is. So in that case, you'll have to improve and add on to the weight, which again we can use by add some dumbbells to the home gym. So I believe uh, everybody can invest in a few pairs of dumbbells at home, 2 kgs, 5 kgs, 10 kgs to start with. A bit of yoga blocks are good. Yoga mat is a good option. Resistance bands are great when it comes to working out at home. They are very good option. And most of the places that the parks and all those places that we have in our society have the equipment which we can use to provide resistance. And the body doesn't understand the difference in resistance basically. It understands resistance. If I'm trying to do a bench press or if I'm trying to do a double press or if I'm trying to do a bottle press, it hardly matters as long as my muscles are getting the stimulus required. That is what it is. So in that case, scaling down the exercise, using different techniques, using a backpack, using water bottles, using resistance bands, all these can be utilized to structure a program. And again, to get the person started, to get them to a point wherein they are confident and comfortable, and wherein they can be like, okay, I want to do more. I want to try this out now. I want to go for heavier dumbbells. Now this is too light for me. Otherwise, we are just holding up space. We can add bench to this equation also. We can add a pull-up bar to this equation also. But then again, these are things which we can always add later on to keep things interesting, considering it's always a space crunch in cities of where we live and we want to live. But these things, like I said, a few pair of dumbbells, a few pair of kettlebells, resistance bands and different setups, different tightness, a yoga mat, a pull-up bar is pretty much most of it can be used to keep somebody fit for the long enough time frame.
Fair enough. Very good. Very nice suggestion.
Shobhan, one thing that most of the women, find it demotivating is that during this particular phase, perimenopausal, menopausal phase, it's very difficult to either control the weight gain or even lose weight gain. So there are two parts to this question: is that how to keep the motivation levels when you see that you've not increased your consumption of food, you are exercising, you've done fair bit of resistance training, but still you're not losing weight. In fact, you're gaining weight at times. How to keep yourself motivated? And second part of question is that after this phase is over, will this weight stay there or will it come down? If you put an effort to lose weight, keep your nutrition on point and exercise.
All right. So see, the first thing is when we talk about women, we also have to see where women are coming from and what their basic lifestyle is. Yes, it's true that they have these hormonal changes around the age of 40 to 50, depends on women, their genetics, their background, and all those things, and which obviously leads to weight gain and susceptibility to develop a lot of issues like low hormone, low estrogen, which kind of lead to bones weakening and also insulin resistance setting in, and also their cardiorespiratory markers start going off. So those things are not clearly working in our favor when it comes to biology. And those are the things which we cannot possibly change. Like that is the nature of how it's supposed to happen. So that is going to happen. There's not much that we can do about it. But first thing is we have to understand what are the things we can change and what are the things we can't change. So the changes that come with age are something that are not in our hands. Those are something which every woman has to go through in her lifetime. तो फर्स्ट इज एक्सेप्टेंस कि ठीक है ये होगा ही होगा, ये चीज होती ही है, आई एम नॉट स्पेशल, आई एम नॉट sidelined, I am not being singled out. That is very important for women to understand. Number two is that considering my experience of handling over like majority of my clients, around 60-70% have been women over the years. So considering that, I would put them in two kinds of economic backgrounds, right? Considering the women in question who are currently in menopause are the kind of women who are struggling with, who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and are struggling with their weight gain. We also have to understand that weight gain is obviously sometimes because of excess calories and the hormones play a role. But we also have to understand a deeper cause to it. That all of us know that eating more leads to weight gain. But throughout our times of 20s, 30s, and 40s, there are a lot of behaviors that are being formed consciously or unconsciously by our prospective partners, by our family members, by our in-laws, by our children, of what we should eat and what we should not eat and what we should do. And those things tend to become a bigger bottleneck when it comes to losing weight than just eating less and start working out. Because we are looking at challenging a belief system which is not just concerned with, see, let's say मुझे आपका वेट कम कराना है शीश, तो मैं आपको बोलूंगा कि आपको ये वेट कम करना है, आपको ये डाइट, आपका ये वर्कआउट, आप नॉट जस्ट आप, मैं एग्जांपल और बता रहा हूँ, अपने घर में दोगे आप उसको, आपके पास खाना बना बनाया आ जाएगा, आप शाम को निकलोगे अपनी गाड़ी से चाबी लेके निकलोगे, जिम जाओगे, जिम से वापस आ जाओगे. You can do that because you have the luxury and liberty to do that. It is not to do with joining gym. It is not to do with eating right food. It is not to do with, taking care of yourself. It is a much deeper problem that we are looking at. I get clients जो कि morbidly obese हैं, जिनकी health मतलब पर खच्चे उड़े हुए हैं उनके blood biomarkers के, thyroid मतलब तहस नहस हो चुका है. But the last question when I ask them कि ठीक है, so when are we starting? And they're like, we'll have to ask our husbands or we'll have to ask our children. So they are not the decision makers right now. ठीक है, तो उसके अराउंड आप जितने भी राग लपेट कर लो ना कि हाँ ये खाओ, ये करो, ये वो सब बेकार हो जाएगा, एज लॉन्ग एज दैट इज समथिंग दैट इज नॉट बीइंग फिक्स्ड. क्योंकि जब तक कोई दूसरा मेरे बिहाफ पे डिसीजंस लेता रहेगा, ठीक है, आप वेल विशर हो मेरे, आप बहुत अच्छा समझते हो मुझे, बट आप मैं नहीं हो ना, तो आप मेरे हित में क्या अच्छा है वो आप अपने लेंस से सोच के बता रहे हो, which also involves a lot of control, which also involves a lot of patriarchy, which also involves a lot of traditional gender roles. ठीक है कि घर की औरत बाहर जाएगी तो फिर वो हाथ में नहीं रहेगी, वो भी तो बात है, आपको भी तो कंट्रोल करना है कहीं ना कहीं. सो a lot of these things are at play. तो उस पर्टिकुलर एज ग्रुप को अगर मैं किसी 20 साल के लड़के को ट्रेन करना है तो कोई दिक्कत की बात नहीं है, वो लड़ के जिम जाएगा, वो लड़ झगड़ के कहीं ना कहीं कुछ भी करके अपने घर वालों से बात नहीं करके उनको जाना है जिम, जो करना है कर लो, मैं 2 दिन खाना नहीं खाऊंगा. घर की माँ ऐसा कर सकती है? नहीं कर सकती. वो 2 दिन खाना नहीं खाएगी, तीसरे दिन को उसको पूछेगा नहीं, हाथ थक के वो खुद ही खाना खाएगी. तो दैट गैप हैज टू बी ब्रिज्ड इन फर्स्ट प्लेस. अदरवाइज वॉट एवर वी आर लुकिंग एट आर जस्ट शॉर्ट टर्म सोल्यूशंस. ठीक है 3 महीना किसी ने नहीं ध्यान दिया, ठीक है 3 महीना मैंने जिम कर लिया, ठीक है 3 महीना मैंने वर्कआउट कर लिया. But the system that has been created in her house, wherein she's not supposed to waste food, when she's not, where she's supposed to make every member of the family happy, where she's supposed to cook for everybody. So that system is not facilitating for her to stay fit. If a woman wants to stay fit, and that is even more important for women to start, taking this as a challenge and starting to get fit, because अगर it's the same thing as education कि अगर एक औरत पढ़ती है वो 4 लोगों को पढ़ाती है, मर्द पढ़ता है वो बाहर जाता है, कमाता है, घर पैसे लाता है. अगर एक औरत फिट होगी तो बाकी लोगों के घर का खाना अपने आप चेंज होगा, तो अपने आप वो बेटर ईटिंग हैबिट्स आएगी, बेटर उनका डिसिप्लिन आएगा, बेटर उनका ये आएगा. तो वो चीज है कहीं ना कहीं इसमें. a lot of women play enablers also thanks to the kind of conditioning they have had throughout their lives. कि मतलब I get people who are like डाइट नहीं हो पाई, तो क्यों नहीं हो पाई भैया, तो मम्मी घर गई है. 40 साल के तुम आदमी हो, तुम्हारी मम्मी खाना बना रही है तब तुम खा रहे हो, तो इट डजंट सर्व कि चिकन खाना था, मना क्यों, मम्मी ने मना कर दिया, क्यों मना कर दिया भाई, तुम्हारा अपना स्टैंड कहाँ है? तो वो चीज जो है वो इंडियन सोसाइटी में बहुत ही इनग्रेन्ड है स्पेशली, ठीक है? तो इफ दिस सम एस्पेक्ट ऑफ ट्रेनिंग और न्यूट्रिशन दैट इंडिया हैज टू वेक अप टू, इट हैज टू बी दिस, you need to start making a women independent when it comes to taking their day to day decisions, क्योंकि जब वो टेकन केयर ऑफ हो गया ना, तो फिर आती है बात डाइट की, वर्कआउट की, फिर सारी चीजें आती हैं। उसके पहले तो सब भाई ड्रामा ही है, फिर बातें हैं बस कि आप ये कर लो, आप वो कर लो। एज लॉन्ग एज वी आर नॉट लुकिंग एट द रूट कॉज, इट्स नॉट गोइंग टू possibly change anything.
I mean, I must
Yeah, so
appreciate you.
that was taking care of the mindset.
Hmm.
Sorry, Vanita. Yeah,
Yes,
please
no,
go
no.
ahead.
I just said that, Shobhan. I think you've spoken like a true coach. So the mindset is what plays the most important role.
True.
Yeah. So, sir, you've talked about the mindset part of it. Just a little bit of technical part remains about uh, whether they can lose weight after this phase gets over, perimenopause or menopause, or is it a permanent weight on their bodies?
वही, अगर आप चीजों पर डायल इन कर रहे हो, then obviously results are to be there. We just have to be a bit more
Right.
careful, because again, the body is not as young as it was. That is the first thing. You have to respect your body. You have to start respecting your food choices. You have to start respecting yourself. So कुछ behavioral changes, जैसे कि अब ये नहीं कि बेटे ने थाली में खाना छोड़ दिया तो वो खा रहे हैं, ठीक है, या फिर टेस्ट करने के नाम पे थोड़ा थोड़ा खा ले रहे हैं, या फिर इसलिए वर्कआउट नहीं कर रहे हैं क्योंकि मेरे पास खुद के लिए टाइम नहीं है। सबके लिए टाइम है, खुद के लिए टाइम नहीं है, वो वाली चीज। तो वो चीजें जब एक बार डाइलिंग हो जाती है, वंस वी आर एबल टू टेक केयर ऑफ दोस थिंग्स, it becomes a matter of sticking to the program and getting things executed on a day-to-day basis, which again means कि आप एक खास पैटर्न में खा रहे हो, you are actually tracking food in some way or the other. Doesn't have to be कि आप ऐप के थ्रू ट्रैक कर रहे हो, बट एक कहीं ना कहीं कुछ ना कुछ लॉग होना चाहिए, क्योंकि यू कैन नॉट बी अफोर्डिंग टू डू सर्टेन एक्टिविटीज कि आप जब कोई आ रहा है तो आप एक कप चाय उनको साथ देने के लिए पी रहे हो, चाय के साथ थोड़ी वाई भी हो जा रही है, कभी थोड़े बिस्किट्स हो जा रहे हैं, कभी थोड़े नमकीन हो जा रहे हैं। तो आप देखो अगर, तो most of the people, most of the time, they are not actually, when it comes to calories, they are not eating a lot of calories per se. वो रोज मेंटेनेंस तक ही खा रहे हैं, और वीकली एक दो बार वो खा ले रहे हैं इतना ज्यादा कि फिर वो ओवर सरप्लस में ऐड हो रहा है। दैट इज द यूजुअल पैटर्न, राइट? तो डेली फूड चॉइसेस आपकी क्या हैं? आप मंथली, आप वीकली कितना किस तरीके से खा रहे हो, आप कितना उस तरीके से उसको मैनेज कर पा रहे हो, वो सारी चीजें मैटर करेंगी, and only then we can make progress. But yeah, quite doable, quite possible. It just requires a bit of planning and intelligent execution, I would like to say.
Intelligent execution, be consistent, don't worry
कंसिस्टेंसी तो
about
मतलब हाँ,
short-term
वो तो
goals.
अनसेड है, कंसिस्टेंसी के बिना तो कुछ
Look
नहीं।
at the long story. No, don't look at
ट्रू
the
ट्रू ट्रू
short-term goals. So, Shobhan sir, there's so many questions still that we would like to ask, and listeners would be wanting answers to, but then time is also a constraint. But what I really get from our conversation today is that खाली प्रोटीन खाने से बॉडी नहीं बनेगा. It is not just protein that makes you build your muscles. You need
ट्रू
mechanical tension to it. So it's a combination of exercise and nutrition that helps
ट्रू
you be fitter, be there. And another thing which really comes to my mind is that when you have to have a healthy lifestyle or a healthier yourself, it is you don't require any radical diet or radical exercise
ट्रू
changes. Just common
ट्रू
sense.
ट्रू
Just common sense of how we eat, how we move, and how we
ट्रू
live. And that's what has come out of our conversation today, which is, I think, very relatable to us people जो सुबह से शाम तक अपनी जिंदगी जीने में लगे हुए हैं, to take care of their family, to earn their livings, and they don't have that special people with them कि उनके लिए खाना बन के तैयार पड़ा है. So it's
ट्रू
just little common sense, finding those times in those gaps and exercising, stealing those moments.
ट्रू
5 minute मिल गए, walk कर लिया, and that should get going.
ट्रू
That should set you that should set you going towards your fitter self.
ट्रू
So thank you so much,
माय
Shobhan,
प्लेजर।
for all the information, all the time that you've given. You've given us a lot of your time.
यस, इट वाज
And
लवली।
thank you, listeners.
It was lovely
Yeah.
having these questions, and it really made me think a lot of things that we do on a day-to-day basis. But when we are asked about those things, it really helps us get a clearer picture from our end also. So yeah, thank you for inviting and thank you for having me over. It was such a lovely conversation speaking to both of you.
So yeah, as coaches, it's our job to make the guest think, and this is what we do. So thank you, Anita, for your asking very relevant questions and participating in this. And thank you, listeners, for listening to our podcast. If you liked it, please do subscribe to our content on the YouTube and leave us review on the Spotify. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Shobhan. Thank you
Thank
once
you.
again.